The man returned to Earth before the disaster struck, and his first act was to pour all his resources into repairing a broken brush. Only he knew that this brush was a legendary double S-grade item that could grant him the physique of a martial saint. Time rewound to moments before. A game called War Economy quickly rose to global fame. Initially just an ordinary game, it transformed entirely with the emergence of the Space League. The game became reality. If one died in-game, they would lose their life in the real world as well. Moreover, the lower-ranked nations will face the devastation wrought by monsters. This has clearly escalated into a battle for survival. Currently, only 10 nations remain on Earth, preparing to confront their final life-or-death moment, as they must resist the invasion of apocalyptic beasts. However, against such formidable monsters, even with numerous players engaging in combat, they seem no more than tiny ants before their overwhelming power. A single powerful strike could obliterate an entire team. Yet, the appearance of one man turned the tide. He concentrated his strength into the palm of his hand. With a mighty swing, he unleashed his hand towards the creature. Accompanied by a violent shockwave, the success of his defense resonated throughout the battlefield. This man is known as the Holy Warrior, Shin Chi-han. Although he paid the price of losing an arm to win, his glory was usurped by a blonde-haired uncle. The chairman of the #1 guild in the An Kingdom, the world's #1 player, Baron Williams. At the same time, the other girls rushed in to heal the man. Despite the impressive feat of taking down the monster single-handedly, as the guild leader, he was expected to shine alongside his team. Thus, he called for his teammates to relinquish the rewards from the boss fight. Though the others were deeply dissatisfied, they could do nothing, for he had become humanity's last hope. The guild chairman also explained the reason for not sharing the spoils with him. Because he wasn't a citizen of either nation. It was clear that he had grown accustomed to this treatment long ago. Even with his 3S skill level, standing 7th in the world, he still endured scorn and discrimination simply for not being from the An Kingdom. Yet, what tormented him the most was that he was now the sole survivor in Nation A. Just as his arm was about to heal, an announcement of mission completion echoed from the defense of Nation N, declaring success. Nation Z had also succeeded, while the remaining 8 nations faced total defeat. However, the conditions for victory required over half of the players to survive. Clearly, humanity had failed. Now, in this critical moment, they must defeat Uruk to grasp the hope of survival. Hearing this, the Saintess immediately proposed to the guild chairman, "To confront the Uruk, we need the help of the Archive. After all, it was thanks to him that they managed to defeat that monster last time." But before he could finish speaking, the chairman had already decided who would face the challenge, accompanied by a flash of white light. A colossal Uruk materialized before everyone's eyes. Instantly, the chairman unleashed his full power. In the blink of an eye, a tempest of lightning enveloped him. Yet, as he charged towards the beast to strike, next moment, a dark shadow darted past, followed by the chilling announcement of the chairman's demise. Panic erupted among the crowd. Within mere moments, humanity faced utter annihilation. With the final swing of the monster's arm, the ominous game over message echoed through the air. Humanity was classified as a worthless species. The Cosmic Alliance made the grim decision to eradicate humankind. Almost immediately, dark substances emerged around them, devouring everything in their path. The world had finally reached its cataclysm, a fate even the man could not deny. But just a heartbeat later, an error notification appeared, revealing that one soul had survived. Surprisingly, it was the nameless divine weapon of the man that resisted the obliteration. Even the Cosmic Alliance was taken aback. Had he known the true name of that nameless weapon sooner, Korea might have escaped its doom, preserving those most dear to him. At that moment, the deities of the Cosmic Alliance began to take notice of the man. After deliberation, they granted him another chance to challenge fate. As his vision blurred, when the man opened his eyes once more, he found himself back before the game began. It seemed like a golden opportunity. If he could leverage the knowledge gained from his past life, he was certain he could alter the future. This time, it was not just about changing the future, he would protect everything, having witnessed the world spiral into oblivion firsthand. and now he was back. Just when the cosmic alliance had emerged, Korea remained remarkably stable. Among the global player rankings, there were 11 beings deemed the mightiest, with the third position held by a player from Korea, the Sword Emperor, the seal of the true kingdom. Thanks to his presence, their position could not be shaken by other nations. But one fateful day, the Sword Emperor suddenly declared his allegiance to the new forces of Country C. This was the most shocking news in Korean history. It was on that very day that the man returned. In his memories, ever since the Sword Emperor departed, Korea's rank in the war economy had plummeted drastically. The departure of the Sword Emperor had led to Korea's downfall, and that very man was his brother-in-law. He couldn't comprehend why his sister had fallen for someone like him. If his sister were still alive, would everything be different? But now was not the time for such thoughts. His current attributes were in dire straits. But it is understandable. After all, the man had previously wasted time because he was unaware of how powerful this talent truly was. In this world, although everyone becomes a player at 18, only a select few are able to awaken their talents. When his talent was rated as the lowest level F, he began to waste his life. At that time, he did not understand the true value of this skill, which could only be demonstrated after awakening. But now, he is very curious as to why it displays as level 2 when it is only a level 1 attribute. It showed as level 2. He suddenly remembered that perhaps he had accidentally consumed an experience potion which led to the level up. But what was that? Why were there 100,000 achievement points? He couldn't recall doing anything grand. Could it be that everything had changed because he had returned? At that moment, an achievement point exchange card next to him caught his attention. It could unlock a relic store. It seemed like a special item meant only for him, so he decided to use it immediately. The next moment, the achievement store appeared before his eyes. It seemed this was the way to enhance items by upgrading the store to a higher level. After he upgraded the store to level 4, a notification appeared about an emergency enhancement repair that could restore incomplete items to their complete state. At this moment, the man's joy was unmistakable. Next, he stepped into the gaming room. Although it was the legacy of the Sword King, thanks to him, the man could now enjoy it. Immediately afterward, he took out his first item, a broken brush pen. When he used the emergency repair feature, in just a moment, the broken brush pen was successfully restored. Now, with all preparations complete, the Steer Eastern brush appeared. At the same time, the tutorial lock for newcomers in the Southern Copper tournament was about to start. Seeing that there wasn't much time left, the man quickly called up the status window and began to write on it. In the past, he was known as the Martial Saint for a reason. This pen had the ability to merge all attributes into strength. By simply writing those two words with this pen, he would obtain the legendary physique of the Martial Saint. At the same time, a formidable power began to gather, causing the status window to flicker continuously. At that moment, the countdown for the match was almost over. Shortly thereafter, he was transported into the battle ritual. The mission this time was to survive, enduring both monsters and players in the arena. As the number of remaining players halved, the survival match would automatically conclude. The arena, yes, but at this moment, what concerned him more was whether he had indeed acquired the Martial Saint physique. After a thorough check, the man breathed a sigh of relief. Not only had he obtained the Martial Saint physique, but he had also completed a special skill achievement. Achievement points increased by 10,000. It felt like reuniting with an old friend. This was merely the beginning of mastering the nameless divine art. With this, he could easily surpass this battle. Just then, an announcement appeared on the screen. A man not using a connector to play the game would have to endure pain within the game itself. Suddenly, he recalled the connector left by the Sword Monarch, a high-end device that could reduce pain by 99. But for now, it wasn't necessary to use that. At that moment, a mission notification popped up. Achieve the number 1 position in the rookie training course to earn 1,000 achievement points. With the Holy Martial Physique, he could accomplish this effortlessly, coinciding with the game's kickoff. He spotted a shadow lurking behind him. Just as he thought he could lay hands on the man, he froze. The man simply used 2 fingers to block his advance. Now it was time for his counterattack. The scene shifted. Time rewound before Kui launched his attack. At this moment, he was ready to shine in the competition. After all, the Southern Men's Tournament was the first stage for the stars of major guilds. The guilds were places for player training and management, capable of molding powerful players right from the tournament's inception. He belonged to a secondary guild directly managed by the second group, which boasts many stars of tomorrow, renowned throughout the realm. Kui joined this guild after receiving a first-class talent in agility, marking his entry into this extraordinary world. Yet, very few possessed such talent. Thus, it was highly likely he could make it into the top 50. Among the contestants, his gaze immediately fixated on a man in a white shirt who stood out remarkably from the crowd. Without hesitation, he charged in for an attack. To his astonishment, the man stopped his assault with just 2 fingers. This was truly incredible, as his own speed surpassed everyone else's. Then, with a casual flick of his hand, the man sent him flying, as if dismissing his meager talent. Did he dare to compete in this event? Couldn't believe it. Are you underestimating my first-class talent? The man nodded in affirmation. Hearing this, he unleashed all his strength. In the blink of an eye, his silhouette appeared before the man. But the man merely leaned aside, effortlessly evading the attack. With a series of swift maneuvers, he skillfully dodged each strike. Though his speed surpassed that of the man, in his previous life, the man had endured countless battles, while his own attack patterns were far too predictable. The man could even foresee his opponent's next move. When he unleashed all his strength into a single strike, the man merely flicked his wrist, sending the long sword soaring away. In a swift counterattack, his opponent was immobilized on the spot. Although he claimed he wouldn't spare the man next time, only the man understood that there wouldn't be a next time. As the player vanished, the sword in the man's hand slowly dissipated. Now that the warm-up had ended, he needed to eliminate over 5 opponents to secure the top spot. Just as anticipated, no one chose monsters as their foes. In the combat realm, apart from players, monsters also lurked in the shadows. However, defeating 10 monsters only equated to taking down 1 player. Hence, most players in the early stages opted to challenge other players instead. Especially creatures like Uruk, they often appeared in swarms, making them an undesirable choice for opponents. Just then, a new quest materialized: eliminate the Uruk horde. Defeating 30 monsters would reward him with 500 achievement points. Although it was a daunting task and the rewards seemed underwhelming, the achievement points were 5 times greater than those earned from defeating a human. With that in mind, there was no reason to shy away from this quest. Monsters were merely monsters compared to the true menace of Uruk. They hardly measured up. So let's see what happens. As the man rushed toward the horde of monsters, they charged at him in unison. At the same moment, 2 axes were hurled directly at him, yet he swiftly caught them. The axes had to be thrown in this precise manner. With a flick, the thrown axes swiftly took down 2 monsters. As the creatures stood in shock, the man appeared behind them, swinging his battle axe with deadly precision. Instantly, several monster heads rolled to the ground. At that moment, the mission progress reached 1 out of 6. Just then, numerous monsters lunged at him, but with a quick spin, he effortlessly felled them all around him. Meanwhile, a spear shot towards him, but he effortlessly snapped it in half. This spectacle left even the onlookers in disbelief. While they were still in shock, the man swung his battle axe toward a beastman, but in the next moment, the axe unexpectedly splintered in 2. Seizing the opportunity, several beastmen charged at him, yet he remained calm, feeling a surge of power in his legs. Instantly, the ground around him erupted. Then, he reached out to seize a sword, and in the blink of an eye, the man completed the mission of exterminating the beastmen. He immediately received 500 achievement points, and his level surged higher. Typically, experience points are calculated after the game concludes. Though the man couldn't fully grasp what was unfolding, enhancing his attributes was always a good thing. Thus, he bolstered his power. The unique attribute power synthesizes all abilities, allowing him to unleash strength double that of an ordinary person. Moreover, when his power reaches 30, he will unlock the nameless divine technique. However, in the man's impression, strength is not an attribute that can be easily enhanced. He needs to accumulate combat experience and engage in continuous training to elevate his skills. However, the ease with which he can advance now is simply astonishing. At this moment, an arrow flies straight toward him. The man leans away to dodge. It seems that the two have begun to team up. Such occurrences are quite frequent in this game. The emblem on their armor indicates that they belong to one of the 10 major guilds in Korea, the Turtle Guild. It appears that both are part of the same guild. At this point, there are only about 60 players left. The game is nearing its end. Who would have thought there would be so few remaining? If he can evade this assault, he will successfully pass this trial. While the two are conversing, the man checks the status of his score. Although the man has only eliminated 4 targets, he still holds the top position. It seems his lead is firmly established. Just as a woman named Tringok lunges to attack him, a shadow suddenly appears and swiftly takes her down with just 46 points of power. At this moment, a warrior beside them witnesses the scene and trembles with fear. In the next instant, the man quickly appears behind him and unleashes a powerful strike to his back. Who would have thought his armor would be so resilient? The man then frantically slashes in one direction, increasing the frequency of his attacks. The armor is finally crushed. How could an ordinary suit of armor withstand my might? As the man shatters the enemy's defenses, 2 individuals sitting before the screen watch his every move. Even Minister Lee Hain-gwin of Human Resources is taken aback by the display. It is fortunate that he did not appear next to Lim Jae-gwin, otherwise he might not even hold on to the second position. Yet, the minister is curious. If he encounters him in the next match, will he have the strength to defeat him? Although he claimed he would try to avoid the man, the minister, eager to gather more information about him, orders him to confront him directly. He gazes at the man on the screen, lost in thought. Thin Chi Han seems to have crossed paths with him before. Lim Jae-gwin, renowned for his steer talent nurtured by the Splinter Guild, is a star of the future. He was supposed to shine at the Dong tournament in Jiangnam, but unexpectedly, the man's appearance has changed everything. No one can comprehend why a second-tier contestant possesses such formidable power. Who exactly is he? The scene transitions. Dongjiangnan tournament has concluded, and the experience gained from the competition has propelled him from level 3 to level 6. Immediately after, the man allocated all 3 of his attribute points into strength. In addition, he received the title of Champion of the Bronze Tournament. In this Bronze Tournament, this title grants a bonus of 1 point to all attributes and adds 20 experience points. Although it only applies to the Bronze Tournament, this attribute boost is still quite significant. With the support of the title, the man's strength has now reached 10 points. Once his strength hits that mark, he can effortlessly complete the Bronze Tournament, and the Silver upgrade station will unlock after reaching level 25. Therefore, focusing solely on the Bronze Tournament is sufficient. Just then, a thought suddenly struck him. It was the opportunity for class change. Upon reaching level 5, one can select a basic profession. Class change is a pivotal moment, granting players without a profession essential skills. There are 4 classes: warrior, archer, mage, and healer. In his previous life, the man had chosen to become a warrior. If he continued on that path, he would be able to progress more swiftly. However, the emergence of the achievement shop has opened up new possibilities for him. He could explore other classes to experience different skills. Then, when necessary, he could spend 10,000 achievement points to unlock an additional class slot. Thus, becoming a warrior was no longer his top priority. This time, the profession he would choose would be none other than this. The scene shifts back to the Dongjiangnan tournament, where the mission now is to defend the precious crystal and survive the oncoming tide. The battle will continue until only 5 towers remain. At that very moment, 2 beams of blue light flashed. The newcomers were an archer from the LK Guild and a mage without a guild, but equipped exceptionally well. Now, only the most essential class remained healer. The defensive mission is a battle of attrition, making the healer's support capabilities incredibly crucial. In the next instant, Lam Jingwen froze in place as a familiar face appeared before her. It turned out to be Thin Chi Han. It seemed this was the defense match. Just 20 minutes ago, the man had chosen the healer class. Although the notification window indicated that this profession was unsuitable for him, he resolutely made his choice. The reason he opted for healer was simple. By selecting a support role, he could unlock the divine power skill. This was a necessary factor for acquiring a unique attribute. However, developing that unique attribute would be quite challenging, since he couldn't enhance it through practice alone. It would require a substantial investment of achievement points. Yet currently, achievement points could only be spent on the nameless divine art. Nevertheless, the man quickly devised a solution. He had thought of a very reliable plan. Meanwhile, the mage was vocally complaining, expressing dissatisfaction. He believed the man's outfit was too shabby to stand alongside his expensive gear. Although the archer attempted to persuade him to be quiet, he paid no heed. At that very moment, the man swiftly seized him and forcefully hurled him out of the tower. If you don't want to play, then just don't. Even without you, we can survive just fine. After being thrown from the tower, he no longer held the haughty demeanor he once had. Now he was kneeling, pleading for the man's mercy. To gain that mercy, he was willing to do anything. The man kneeling was named Kim Kwi-hak. His change in demeanor was not without reason. In this competition, each contestant started with 3 lives, but he had already lost one because of the man's actions. Then, during a conflict with the man, he lost another life. Now, he was left with only 1 life. If he were to die again, he would be at the bottom of this contest. Desperate to avoid such a fate, he begged the man for mercy, for the one who placed last would face the penalty of demotion. If that were to happen, the vast amount of resources he had spent on acquiring valuable skills would vanish without a trace. When his rank did not match his skills, those skills would automatically be erased. At that moment, the man suddenly recalled that he seemed to be quite proficient in fire magic. Naturally, fire magic was highly effective against monsters, and now that he was a level 15 mage, the man was certain he wouldn't easily give up such a precious resource. Meanwhile, Lam Jingwen was deep in thought, trying to recall where she had seen him before. Then she remembered that this person was named Kim Kwi-hak. He had once been a member of a top 10 guild, a mage with great expectations riding on him. However, in the silver upgrade competition, he had suffered 4 consecutive failures. From there, he began causing trouble everywhere and eventually became a failure. Just then, Kim Kwi-hak suddenly made a demand of the man. If you apologize to me, I will gladly cooperate with everyone. Instantly, the surroundings fell silent. The next moment, a familiar scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. You dare to ask me to apologize? Following that, the man promptly launched him into the air before knocking him away again. Mage Kim Kwi-hak crashed down outside the tower. The scene shifted to another mage utilizing fire magic. Just as Kim Kwi-hak had mentioned, fire was indeed very effective against monsters. At that moment, the crowd found themselves in an awkward situation and began to blame the man for his actions. Meanwhile, the man was busy reviewing his mission window. The limited time task offered a reward of 1,000 achievement points for the first position, along with related tasks. To slay 1,000 undead alone would reward him with 3,000 achievement points. However, with the time left, it was truly insufficient to complete the task. Yet, the man was unwilling to give up those 3,000 points, so he fell into deep contemplation. At that moment, Lam Jingwen had been observing the man for a long time and thought that he was just a selfish individual, always putting himself first. Guild Division had no reason to investigate him. Just then, the golden-haired boy hinted to the man, "If this continues, you'll have to fight alone." "Can I really do that?" At that moment, the man fell into contemplation. Perhaps he could handle it. Lam Jingwen, on the other hand, believed that a healer should stay back while he took the lead. But the man insisted, "That's unnecessary. I can be at the forefront." All he needed to do was protect the marksman. Just then, a colossal zombie unexpectedly appeared before them. As the two prepared to fight, the man raised the staff in his hand. In the next instant, a powerful thrust felled the creature instantly. Both of them felt utterly astonished. Was this truly the sacred flame, Was it divine power? At that moment, a horde of zombies surged toward the man, but in an instant he dispatched them with ease. Though he was unsure if he could keep this up, for now he managed to do it just once. Mission completion status 6 out of 1000. Suddenly, the man accelerated. In the blink of an eye, he plunged into the zombie den, and within moments, he had annihilated 26 undead creatures. The zombies, impervious to physical attacks, found themselves facing a man who unleashed a hint of divine power to vanquish them. Witnessing this spectacle, even the golden-haired boy became an ardent fan of his. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwin was left in shock, for this man not only wielded his divine power with precision, but, more importantly, every strike he delivered was aimed directly at the monsters' heads. Just then, the mission was marked complete 1 out of 5, qualifying him for an upgrade in divine power. Immediately, a notification appeared, announcing that the man had leveled up his divine abilities. It seemed he had guessed correctly. This was indeed another way to enhance his divine power and utilize it effectively. The sacred artifact, upon its first emergence, carried an enigmatic allure that continuously increased its value. Yet, after a decade, humanity had failed to uncover its hidden potential, allowing it to fade into obscurity. However, the man learned from Sophia that the sacred artifact could amplify the wielder's divine power. Although it was limited to competitive settings, he realized that his ability to become a sacred artifact stemmed from his long prayers to harness divine energy. Yet, each sacred artifact came with its own set of conditions, and he knew that someone was still gathering these items. Suddenly, the man recalled that he could recognize that person. Upon returning, he remembered visiting the Sword King's library to investigate. He was taken aback to find the ground littered with the now ineffective sacred artifacts. Indeed, the one who collected these artifacts was none other than his sister, a sister who had fought alongside the Sword King and was hailed as the greatest hero. But that was during a time when she had been at his side amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, the man focused on the staff next to a level 1 holy artifact, capable of absorbing divine power by striking the heads of evildoers. It was this very artifact that the man relied on to enhance his own divine strength. However, the divine power available for absorption was nearly depleted, yet using it to combat monsters was still quite effective. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwen appeared utterly shocked, as in her understanding, such maneuvers couldn't be executed through a keyboard. At that moment, the blonde-haired boy suggested whether they should assist those in need. Just then, a zombie charged at him. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling image flashed by, and the monster was dispatched on the spot. The man felt an uncanny familiarity wash over him. Manhwa Sword Lam Jangwen. Though he had the potential to become the next Sword King, it was unfortunate that he fell to the hands of an imposter. He then extended an invitation to the man, suggesting that if they collaborated now, their rankings would surely rise. After reviewing the situation and scores, the man agreed. "Then I leave it in your hands." He leaped down from the tower, preparing to unleash a powerful attack. Instantly, a notification materialized in his status window. The limited-time quest had been completed, but as expected, the quest was only half finished. He realized that perhaps his current strength was still insufficient. When he became stronger, he would return to try again. Yet he wondered if this quest would appear again. Meanwhile, Lam Jangwen remained in disbelief. A healer of a lower rank than her had managed to accomplish this. Could it be a miracle had occurred? Just then, the blonde-haired boy decided to log out of the game. It was also time for the man to return to claim his rewards. However, Lam Jangwen called him back. The strength he demonstrated in the past 2 battles convinced her that he was the talent the Division Guild desperately needed. Thus, she requested his phone number. But she quickly realized she was being too hasty. After all, who would ask for a phone number right after meeting someone? Yet the man told her that if it was related to business, he wouldn't be interested. Furthermore, he had forgotten his own phone number. If they met again, he would definitely let her know. With that, he turned and walked away. At that moment, Lam Jangwen suddenly realized had he just rejected her. The scene transitioned. At present, the man walked slowly down the street. He couldn't recall his phone number, but had he just been accepted into a guild? Although he might soon remember his number, the guild seemed far too prestigious for him. Right now, he had no intention of joining any guild. He began to check his status window. His rank had increased to level 2, granting him 1,500 GP. While gaining divine power was beneficial, this amount of GP was utterly insufficient to purchase any creatures. Perhaps he still needed to return to his sister's house in search of more. After a long moment, the scene transitions to the man returning home. Yet, the shoes that appeared before him rekindled a multitude of memories. Every individual in life carries those moments of regret. And the deepest regret for this man was his inability to protect that special someone. In his past life, they were each other's pillars of support. Despite living in hardship, he never once faltered. The man always urged her to be strong. However, he failed to shield her from the storm. That fateful day became the most regretful moment of his life. Now he finds himself face to face with a long-lost relative, Yi the Ya, the daughter of his sister, and the Sword Monarch. To his surprise, she had returned early from her trip. She revealed that she was the only one who ended her journey prematurely. Since her father had joined the new National Guard, she was left all alone with him. Her worry for him was palpable, but didn't her father ever reach out to her? He did, but he only told Yi, the one thing he had immersed himself in love. For this, he was willing to forsake both the nation and his own daughter. Hearing this, the man felt an immediate surge of rage, though he quickly regained his composure. Regardless of certain matters, he only confided in Yi the Ya that he had fallen into the snare of love. To achieve this, he was prepared to abandon not just South Korea, but even his own daughter. The man's fury reignited, but soon he managed to calm himself again. After all, he was indeed that kind of irresponsible person. The scene shifts as the two engage in conversation, and Lee Haiyan muses that they might still be the targets for recruitment. Just then, an alert from the phone nearby caught his attention. Moments later, a live broadcast appeared before them, and both were taken aback to see that the one streaming was none other than Thin Chi Han. Simultaneously, he boldly announced to the audience that the Sword Monarch was actually his brother-in-law. Slowly, he lifted his right foot. In an instant, he harnessed his strength to strike the ground, creating a fissure. The man focused intently on the emblem of the Sword Monarch. As the audience gasped in astonishment, he raised his fist and unleashed a powerful blow. A single, devastating punch shattered the colossal twin sword statue completely. Next, he would declare his stance on the Sword Monarch joining the new guard ceremony. His actions were not without reason. The War King commanded the largest media presence in the world, and with a single click, the audience's engagement could reap numerous accolades. As the brother-in-law of the Sword Monarch, he was certain he could claim all the rewards. With a series of achievement notifications ringing out as expected, Yi Thezhen could also shine at times. Meanwhile, a familiar black twin sword emblem emerged before him, the insignia of the Sword Monarch's clan. They are all fervent fans of the Sword King, Yi Son. When the Sword King left Korea, they criticized Yi Son-ah, blaming him for the circumstances that forced the Sword King to depart. If he could perish, the Sword King would undoubtedly return here. In the end, Yi Son-ah met a tragic fate at their hands. If you seek a target to unleash your wrath upon, I would be more than willing to be that person. Right away. With a single punch, the man shattered the statue behind him. The Sword King would never return. The man then pulled out his phone and declared, "Listen closely. Since joining the new guard, the last time he had a fairy tale moment with his daughter was just as I have mentioned. Yi Son, for the sake of a woman, abandoned both Korea and even his own daughter." Following this, Yi Son-ah began to speak. "Hello everyone, my name is Yi Son-ah, the woman of the Sword King, Yi Son. Though the Sword King has left this palace to him, yet he could not accept the wealth left behind by that man. Thus, he decided to donate it to the nation, hoping that it would seize this opportunity to cultivate even more exceptional gamers. As for the specifics, he would clarify later." 30 minutes ago, Yi Son-ah wore a look of skepticism. She couldn't fathom why this man would donate all his hard-earned possessions. Though he was somewhat difficult to understand, he alone knew that after Yi Son joined the giant nation, he had aided them in annihilating Korea. This had ignited fury among the people of Korea. The government began seizing all of Yison's assets, leaving Yisona in a state of desperation, even facing threats from the Sword King clan. Ultimately, she had to barter her very life, knowing she would soon lose her place here. Rather than losing everything, he chose to donate, seeking the support of the people. This also served as a form of assurance for Yisona. Though he didn't quite grasp why the man felt compelled to act this way, he ultimately chose to trust his uncle, believing that the confident uncle would return. As anticipated, the criticisms from the Sword King clan began to target the man. But to ensure no mistakes were made, he started recounting, "Yison, I believe I have acted rightly. Although on the surface, you do this for a woman, I alone know that you fled to the giant realm out of fear that you wouldn't succeed in Korea. Right, Yison? You are outdated now. Once you've settled in the giant realm, make the most of your remaining days, for I will soon confront you. I will obliterate everything you possess." At that moment, as the man warned the Sword King, Yisona's face reflected deep concern. The man's words sent shockwaves through the world. Yet, more than this, he was increasingly curious about why the man seemed to have transformed into someone entirely different. After facing death once, how could things ever return to the way they were? Just then, the doorbell rang, capturing their attention. Who could it be at this moment? To one side, the Sword King had already caught wind of everything unfolding. The scene shifted to reveal an elderly man arriving for a visit. The visitor was none other than Director Park Yunji of the War Department. Since the Sword King had left, he had been looking after the two of them with great care. Clearly, the man had anticipated his arrival, signaling for him to speak plainly. "No need for pleasantries. You're here to ask me to retract the donation for the Sword King, aren't you? Because if the government accepts this donation, it would mean acknowledging that the Sword King will never return. Even his uncle could not foresee this." The man before him had indeed undergone a profound transformation. As he had mentioned, they had not completely given up hope of finding the Sword King. To facilitate this, he suggested that the man adopt a management trust model, essentially transferring ownership to someone else with the condition that the Sword King would return later. The ownership would revert to him upon the Sword King's return. If both could continue to live here, that would be even better. Immediately, he presented the man with a contract, for only through this could both parties achieve a mutually beneficial status, and the man expressed his deep understanding of their situation. However, before confirming, he had to agree to a condition set by the man. The scene shifted, and now the arena was bustling with noise and excitement. At that moment, a figure appeared before the crowd, landing dramatically on the ground. It was the broadcaster, Liu Guangjin-se. Though he received much affection from the audience, his actions were quite poor. As a gold-tier individual, he voluntarily lowered his rank to compete in the arena alongside those of the bronze tier. With his overwhelming power, he mocked the bronze-tier contestants. When he decided to choose his first victim, surprisingly, it was Thin Chi Han who stood before him. He was curious about this man and stepped forward to conduct an interview, but the man paid him no mind. Instead, he assessed his own condition. At that moment, his window displayed a notification the Sword King clan had issued a bounty mission to eliminate Thin Chi Han, offering a reward of 2,000 GP. Seeing that Liu Guangjin-se remained inactive, the Sword King clan continued to raise the bounty. Finally, he accepted the mission at the price of 50,000 GP. "Then leave this matter to me." Immediately, he focused his strength into his legs, and in the next instant, he swiftly moved behind the man. Just at that moment, the man spun around, swinging his staff with a force that sent the long sword flying from his grasp. Almost instantly, he drew a dagger from his pocket. In the blink of an eye, a shadow darted past, eliminating him in a flash. The player, Thin Chi Han, had claimed his first drop of blood. Achievement reward, 100 points. It seemed his culinary skills had taken a bit of a hit. Even though Lu Kwang Kim Suk had been slain by the man, he was resurrected almost immediately. The Cross of Resurrection allowed its user to revive once, but it could not be utilized in the national tournament. As he reappeared in all his glory, the man had already closed the distance behind him. With a single swift strike, Han Thang scored a double kill. It had been ages since he witnessed anyone wielding that item, which had one fatal flaw. However, that was only half the story. Today was bound to be chaotic, as this was an official match with spectators in attendance. And these onlookers were from the fairy clan. Their presence unsettled the man, as they hastened the doom of humanity. Though he longed to deal with them immediately, he had pressing matters to attend to first. He slowly gazed at the crowd, and in the next moment, they were struck with terror and scattered in panic. For he was far more fearsome than Lukwang Kimsuk himself. Glancing at the two holy artifacts in his hands, he knew he could take on more quests and reap greater rewards. He could only choose the path of relentless combat. At that moment, a quest appeared to eliminate all goblins present. This was most agreeable to him. The scene shifted as the man swiftly charged toward the goblins. In an instant, a powerful blow struck the goblin. A shadow zipped past, obliterating the creature on the spot. In the foreground, an announcement signaled the reaction of the holy artifact. It seemed he had discovered how to wield them by striking his enemies with the staff. Then, he followed up with a dagger thrust into the heart of his foe. Though he had grasped the use of the holy artifacts, it was clear that the man had squandered too much time. Yet, the ordeal was far from over suddenly. The Goblin King appeared right before him. In the next moment, the man swung his staff, knocking it unconscious to the ground. He raised the dagger in his hand and drove it straight into its heart. With that, he successfully vanquished the Goblin King and earned 500 achievement points. The man received the chef's attire of the demon god, downgraded from level epic to level 1. Despite the downgrade, the man could still absorb power from it. However, to triumph in this battle, he needed to keep an eye on the other players. If they were unwilling to approach him, he would make the first move. Meanwhile, Lukwang Kimsuk was seething with rage. The audience whispers about him, branding him as a useless fool. Yet only he knows that things are far more complex than they perceive. His combat prowess against goblins is at the very least above 35, and he can easily dispatch them without breaking a sweat. In this team tournament, the ability scores are capped at around 25. This man is undoubtedly a black tiger. At that moment, the screen erupted with piercing screams, and suddenly the dazzling golden light came to a halt. The situation in the arena had turned overwhelmingly one-sided. Players are falling to St. Chi-Han at a speed so swift that even the naked eye can hardly keep up. In the blink of an eye, the man has taken down all the contestants in front of him. At this point, the rank of the holy artifact dropped from level 1 to level 0. In the arena, eliminating 10 opponents grants you 5,000 achievement points. Although he has amassed a considerable amount of achievement points and divine power, it is still insufficient for him. Just then, a mission appeared before his eyes, an epic quest to locate the Dark Queen in the arena and provoke her. To his surprise, an epic task emerged amidst this coin tournament. Completing the mission will reward him with 50,000 achievement points. It's worth noting that the constellations are very interested in the Dark Queen. The constellations are divine entities within this combat realm. Should he fulfill the mission they assign, he could receive a special ability from them. However, this is at least a task that typically only appears in the Diamond Tournament. With this opportunity laid out before him, the man could not let it slip away. If he could get a constellation on his side, the others would surely take notice. But amidst the myriad spirits, could he truly find the Dark Queen? At that moment, as the man claimed the top spot solo, major media outlets began to report on him. This was a record, the first established since the departure of Antha Chan. In a flash, he garnered a multitude of fans. Those who once cheered for the Sword King now rallied behind him, while the golden aura became the target of public ridicule. His reputation was plummeting, but he couldn't care less, for he had become a devoted fan of Thin Chi-Han, dreaming of becoming her personal editor. Meanwhile, the two were engaged in conversation, deliberating whether to accept sponsorship from others. In the midst of this, the man sank into contemplation. Though this epic quest seemed straightforward, finding her amidst the crowd was as challenging as reaching the skies. Just then, a voice inquired if he needed assistance. Each time things went awry, his uncle always exhibited such concern. The man then shared his mission with his uncle. He needed to locate the Dark Queen in the arena, aside from knowing she was seated in the stands. He knew nothing else. Though the clues were scarce, he would track her down through the replayed segments. So, I count on your help. The scene shifted as the man returned to his room, then opened his status window. Now was the moment to execute this action, unlocking a new career slot. The man used his hard-earned achievement points to purchase a career slot, allowing him to add a new profession. This time, the class he would choose was Wizard. The instant the man pressed the confirmation button, a wave of purple energy enveloped him. In the following heartbeat, he felt a different kind of energy, divine power, flowing within his heart. The reason he chose the Wizard class was not arbitrary. Only by mastering both the Sorcerer and Wizard classes could he attain that unique hidden attribute, Force. All this information had come from the lips of Balan, who often spoke with drunken pride before his return. What he boasted about the most was possessing a special attribute known as Force. Force was a unique attribute born from the fusion of divine and magical energies. Of course, no one else could wield it. He was the only one among humanity to possess both classes, and Force contained the power to manipulate space itself. Although in the past Bat Luan was the sole bearer of Force, now the tides had changed. For the man was destined to be the second wielder of Force. Even though Bat Luan had poor control over it, this unique attribute had solidified his position as the world's #1. To alter the cataclysmic fate of the Earth, the man must seize this power. Thus, he had to endure the agonizing process of simultaneously channeling divine and magical energies through his hands. Meanwhile, a red energy sphere began to coalesce slowly in his palm. Just when he thought he had succeeded, a powerful surge of energy propelled him back several meters. In this first trial, he had completely exhausted his magical power, yet he still couldn't keep both energy flows converging in his hands. At that moment, a thought struck him. Although he couldn't simultaneously gather both energies, what if he assimilated them within his body? He would begin with the divine energy in the upper dantian, merging it with the magical energy resting in the middle dantian, and finally use the strength from the lower dantian to stabilize it. Thus, the initial form of Force would materialize. All that remained was to compress it. Just then, a burst of red energy exploded from his body as he struggled to unify the three dantians. A warning blared exceeding the player's tolerance levels, life in jeopardy. Meanwhile, Sae felt something amiss and rushed back to his uncle's room. The failure of the Dantian unification was truly unsurprising. Despite the man's attempts to harness power to condense and unify, the criteria for Dantian merging were exceptionally stringent. You not only need to master the use of 3 different types of energy, but also achieve at least a score of 100 or more. If you attempt to merge recklessly, you might very well lose your life. Just then, Sia hurriedly opened the door to the man's room. When she asked why he had let out such a dreadful cry, he merely brushed it off, claiming he had a headache. But Sia was deeply worried, fearing something terrible might have happened to him. However, once she confirmed he was all right, she stated she would continue her search for the Shadow Queen and turned to leave. Observing the man's demeanor, it was clear that his attempt to unify the 3 energy channels had failed. He lacked both experience and rank. But it was no matter after all. He had still gained the power he desired. Though he couldn't unify the 3 channels, he had managed to blend divine and demonic energy. Thus, he managed to attain a certain level of power. The connection between the 3 sources of strength was indeed feeble. At that moment, the man sensed something unusual. Why was the starting value of his power only 12? Suddenly, a notification appeared on the screen. 5 power, and the value of power is shared. If that's the case, then simply raising one attribute would also elevate the others. How wonderful! Just merging 2 abilities has yielded such results. I wonder what would happen if I were to merge 3 abilities. But as of now, it was clear he still couldn't do it. However, once he had attained the desired attribute, it was time to experiment with his magical abilities. Yet, he seemed to have forgotten that he was currently devoid of any magical energy. The scene shifted as the man awoke from his dreams. After a night of absorbing divine energy, his power had increased by 10 points. Now, he was completely unable to absorb any sacred artifacts of rank C or lower. Meanwhile, after a night of relentless effort, Sia finally stumbled upon a clue about the Shadow Queen. Someone, utilizing their visual prowess, had detected some new creatures and captured images, later posting them online. In the images, a dark spirit appeared before the two of them. Currently, her capability was that of the highest Shadow Queen. Although they had discovered some new information, the man believed that things were not as simple as they seemed. Shortly after, Sia informed him that she would continue to compile this information the next day. Even the man had to commend her professionalism. However, glancing at the shattered mirror beside him, he fell into deep contemplation. Just 2 days ago, they had learned of a significant piece of information. The new woman of the Sword Monarch was named Thwayhuk. She possessed a 3S talent and was extraordinarily beautiful. Could it be that the Sword Monarch had been enchanted by this woman's prowess? Naturally, that possibility could not be ruled out. Afterward, the man was cautioned by Bakthu. He must be extremely careful with this woman, as they suspected her talent might fall under the category of mind control. After all, before the Sword Monarch's emergence, many remarkable talents had suddenly appeared together. If her talent was not limited in frequency, she would undoubtedly continue to enchant powerful players. From that day forth, the man began to dig deeper into the secrets surrounding Thwayhuk, yet every lead seemed to vanish into thin air. If what Bakthu had said was true, he needed to prepare himself meticulously, for they might have already set their plans in motion. Just as he resolved to take precautions against the nation, the scene shifted. Today marked the auction of the previous Sword King. The two were now clad in formal attire, making their way toward the ceremony. Meanwhile, Sia appeared visibly tense, but the man gestured reassuringly, signaling her to ease her worries. Just like the previous live broadcast, all we need to do is showcase ourselves. We haven't done anything wrong, so there's no need to be concerned about the gazes of others. Moments later, they arrived at the venue. At that exact moment, a man approached them, announcing that everything was ready. The man could commence the auction, yet he was taken aback. He hadn't anticipated that the condition he had set was to organize an auction for the Sword King. It dawned on him that the man's true aim was to draw the nation's attention here. Indeed, the man's original intention was just that. The special connection module of the Sword King Winthe Trun, along with all her combat data, was precisely what the nation sought. They would undoubtedly go to great lengths to acquire it. Given the current circumstances, it was clear that Winthe Trun wouldn't make an appearance. Therefore, this was an excellent opportunity for everyone to recognize the reality of the situation. Even the man beside him felt astonished, never expecting such a significant transformation from him. This was their last chance to sway public opinion, so the man reminded him to keep a close eye on the new security team's positioning. At that moment, a commotion erupted from a distance, and Sia instantly recognized that it was her aunt and uncles. Although they were trying vehemently to intervene, the reporters needed to focus more on the new security team's positioning. Just then, a heated argument echoed from afar. Thojia quickly realized it was her aunt and uncles attempting to stop Thejia from auctioning the Sword King's items, but a mere glance into their eyes revealed their true intentions. They simply wanted to exploit the Sword King's fame to line their pockets. They had no right to interfere in Thejia's endeavors. Without hesitation, he turned and stepped into the auction hall. As the scene unfolded, the moment the two stepped into the grand event, a swarm of reporters turned their cameras towards him. He simply raised his hand, and in an instant, a flurry of camera flashes erupted, creating a breathtaking spectacle that sent shockwaves through the crowd. A man stood on the stage, beginning his address. The auction was about to commence, featuring 3 extraordinary items. The first was a special gaming connection module designed to reduce in-game pain by up to 99, accompanied by combat data. The second was a personal data analysis tool for gaming. Finally, the research data on elite players from other countries surfaced. At this moment, conversations erupted as everyone seemed eager not to miss out on any treasures, for the insights from these high-level players were not easily obtained. Just then, a hand shot up from behind. It was Ngu Dianhua from the National Defense Team. He boldly declared his willingness to spend 5 billion to acquire everything here, along with a chance for a private conversation with Taeja, but was promptly denied by the man. "If there's anything important, speak plainly here," he insisted, emphasizing that the current atmosphere was not suitable for private discussions. Yet, he seemed hesitant at that moment. If you continue to exhibit hostility, it could become perilous. He was known as Bong Toi, a formidable guardian. Though he couldn't compare to Kim Vung, he was still an exceptional gamer. The man felt a spark of curiosity, wondering if he was trying to mimic Yoon Se-jin. As Bong Toi drew his sword to aim at the man, a swift punch flew toward him, catching him completely off guard. Just as he was about to strike, the man raised his hand to stop him. After all, this was a global live broadcast. No one wanted to display aggression in front of the masses. Meanwhile, Ngu Dianhua, standing beside, hastily apologized to the man. However, there was one thing he needed to declare beforehand. The purchase of all items for 5 billion included the opportunity for a private conversation with Taejia, and he needed to know Taejia's thoughts on this matter. After all, he was the heir to Kim Vung's legacy, thus making Taejia the definitive host of this auction. Furthermore, the topic of conversation revolved around memory, an issue that no one could refuse. Yet, Taejia immediately declined. He showed no interest in information about his father, believing it best to heed his uncle's advice. Though a bit disheartened by the rejection, he remained willing to spend 5 billion to acquire everything here. Subsequently, he pulled out an envelope from his pocket. This was the final letter Kim Vung had sent to Yoon Se-ya. Upon seeing Kim Vung's letter, Taejia fell into deep contemplation. At that moment, Ngu Dianhua was urging the man to sign the contract swiftly. However, the man found himself in a rather awkward position. Before returning, Ngu Dianhua had been banned from the Dark Nation's territory due to his remarkable ability to entice players from other countries. Thus, he was regarded as a calamity for the colossal nation. He might be linked to Thuy Hak, making it imperative for the man to remain vigilant. But the current situation was dire. If the sinful nation continued to seize Kim Vung's belongings like this, it would undoubtedly ignite discontent among the people. Just then, Taeja's statement captured everyone's attention. It was rumored that Kim Vung had donated the Kim Vung Kung. Though he didn't understand why Taeja had acted in such a manner, the intrigue was palpable. But that was the final legacy he left for him. Therefore, he hoped that Taeja could make good use of it. Moreover, their relationship had ended there, and there would be no further contact. Clearly, these were his words. The man then fell into deep thought. The abilities of that woman were definitely real. Although the man deeply disliked Lee Shijin, he at least recognized him as a trustworthy father. How could such a man abandon his daughter just because of a woman? Right after that, Taeja tore up the letter on the spot and asked Ngu Dianhua to convey the message. He was relieved to end the relationship with that woman. As he was pondering how to deal with the pile of shredded paper, he noticed another man swiftly raising his hand, magically gathering the scraps in midair. As he clenched his fist, the pieces flew together, forming a neat stack once again. A flame erupted, incinerating everything instantly. Everyone was extremely astonished because he not only possessed the skills of a warrior, but also held magical and divine powers. Even Ngu Dianhua beside him was very excited. This person was clearly the talent they needed. Immediately afterward, everyone rushed towards the man, all hoping he would join their guild. While he was still bewildered and unsure of what to do, Taeja suddenly collapsed to the ground. What was happening? When he anxiously inquired, Taeja simply stated that he was just acting to help his uncle escape from the crowd. After confirming that Taeja was indeed fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. He then announced to everyone that the auction scheduled for that day would be concluded early due to his niece's ill health. Immediately afterward, he assisted Taeja in leaving the venue. At that moment, Ngu Dianhua apologized to him and expressed a hope to have a serious conversation with him at another opportunity. But just after that, the card in his hand suddenly exploded. That was his response. However, at this moment, Ngu Din Hua Fu became extremely excited because he was convinced that the power the man had just used was immensely strong. Although he is currently just a bronze-level player, he will undoubtedly become the strongest entity before long. With Theijia's help, the two quickly escaped the hall. Just at that moment, an announcement rang out. Ngu Din Hua Fu had donated 10,000 GP points, a surprisingly generous contribution, showcasing his determination not to easily give up. At the same time, a voice halted them. It was Li Haingwin and Li Jian approaching. They soon introduced themselves. Li Haingwin, the head of human resources for the Funki Guild, expressed his pleasure in meeting the man. Yet, the man felt an eerie familiarity with Li Haingwin, as if he had known him from somewhere else. Whether it was his gestures or his confident demeanor, everything about him made the man feel as though they had met somewhere before. Just then, an inadvertent gesture by Li Haingwin made the man freeze in shock. He was certain he knew this person. Is it possible that in a world brimming with potential, one could overlook him? This is a famous quote by Dostoevsky. Though he was a great writer, he was notorious for his gambling. You appreciate this quote, don't you? At that moment, Li Jiaying immediately stepped in front of him and raised his voice in challenge. How do you know the lady's motto? It seems he guessed right. In the past, he was known as Zero, the representative of Baron Williams. Despite his constant intoxication, his unique talent allowed him to rise to the position of second guild leader. He developed skills that originally served only to boost experience points, but upon completing the new player tutorial, those skills expanded their reach to encompass every field. Among all the gifted players, Nurturing Zero proved to be the strongest. From their encounter, it seems the Guild of Divergence truly holds formidable power. Simultaneously, Li Haiyuan chuckled dryly. That's enough of the jokes. Without hesitation, he invited the man to join the Guild of Divergence, stating, "We need talents like you. Perhaps we can find a time to discuss further." It seems his uncle finally has someone interested. At that moment, Li Haiyuan was basking in the joy of success and reminded Li Jiaying to pay attention. He is the one controlling such a man. But soon after, the man confessed he had long forgotten his phone number. Instantly, everyone froze in place. Meanwhile, the young master thought his uncle was pretending to keep him engaged and played along. It seemed the straightforward girl felt uncomfortable and decided to leave early. However, he could take a business card if needed. He would reach out to her. Then he turned to leave. At that moment, Li Jiaying trembled uncontrollably. It was truly difficult to hold back his laughter. Shortly after the auction event, the man appeared once again at the Jiangnan Bronze Tournament. This time, his task was defense. However, he felt a bit weary, as the young master misunderstood that the man had feelings for Li Haiyuan and thought he had ruined everything. Although this wasn't the case, the man was at a loss for how to explain it to her, yet he never expected to encounter Zero in this manner. Before returning, he truly was a renowned gambler, and because they shared similar experiences, their bond grew closer. Though he enjoyed betting on football in his spare time, he had never won a match, as he had never analyzed the player's talents. The scar on her face piqued his curiosity. Could it be he never considered removing it for? He was certain it was the price of dealing with a devil. Then he turned to the man, asking why he had only become strong now. If he had been this powerful back then, Korea would not have faced its demise. Without Korea, perhaps they wouldn't have to endure such a tragic fate, and his friends would not have to suffer the agonizing pain of death. Along with the fact that both of them hail from the H family, they share many other similarities, one of which is their inability to protect the most important person in their lives. Alongside the self-loathing for being too weak, at this moment, netizens seem to have noticed something unusual about the man. He is gripping a massive sword tightly, a class holy sword named the Stone Crown of Uruk. However, due to its sheer weight, its value is quite low. Yet, it appears this does not affect him much. As the man begins to swing the sword, it is clear he has adapted to its colossal weight. At this moment, viewers start to buzz, eager to know the man's condition. As the number of subscribers grows, this demand will likely become even more prominent in the future. But for now, the man has yet to fulfill his subscription goals, so he makes a decision. When the subscriber count hits 200,000, he will reveal his status. Or, if he fails to secure first place in the upcoming matches, he will disclose his condition immediately. Just then, 3 beams of blue light suddenly descend beside the man. The man is taken aback by the simultaneous appearance of 3 figures. A dazzling golden light accompanies an unidentified wizard and Diego Macide. This is the first time he encounters his wife. Before her return, she was a top-tier player. The man realizes something strange. He is a healer, while this place already has a warrior and a wizard, so he should be an archer. Yet, he distinctly remembers that before returning, he was a wizard. So why has he become this way now? Meanwhile, the wizard beside him harbors a deep-seated hatred for the man. What transpired earlier caused him to lose his precious skills. At this moment, he receives a notification from the window. The Sword King clan has initiated a mission to eliminate the crystal, preventing Think Chi Han from claiming first place with a reward of 50,000 GP. Just then, the announcement for the battle begins to sound. Diego Macide quickly performs a kick to launch the attack while signaling the man. Release the controversial report. Although previously unable to use it due to a lack of divine power, now he can fully do so. As he begins to chant, the attributes of everyone are enhanced. At this moment, the man turns to ask the wizard, "This time, will you play the game seriously?" Of course, because if he doesn't listen, the man will be thrown down from the tower. So, leave this to you. Following that, the man leaps down from the towering heights as everyone watches in bewilderment. At this moment, the wizard could no longer contain the rage boiling within him. This time, he wants to see how long the man can withstand the pressure. Confronted by countless foes, the man immediately unleashes fire magic. After all, this was magic activated upon acquiring the attributes of his subordinates, so facing this horde of enemies was hardly a challenge. As the magical energy surged forth, all foes were engulfed in a blazing inferno of azure flames. The man swung his colossal sword down into the earth. In the blink of an eye, every enemy before him was annihilated. Even those who witnessed the scene could hardly believe their eyes. Who was this Think Chi Han? Just then, a blood-soaked corpse lunged at him. But in the next moment, it froze in place, unable to move. As anticipated, the power to manipulate space was truly formidable. Within this absolute domain, anything that entered was subject to the user's will. Though others might be oblivious to this strength, the man was acutely aware of it. This understanding stemmed from his frequent training sessions with Baron Williams. Through these sessions, he gradually grasped the true potential of that power. Then, he enveloped his massive sword in flames and swung it with ferocity. In mere moments, the fierce azure flames swept across the battlefield. With 3 attributes at his disposal, he had become an unparalleled entity in the Tournament of the Bronze. This time, he was determined to achieve the monumental feat of vanquishing 1,000 foes. As the figure of the man glided through the swarm of monsters, all that lingered in his mind was the completion of his mission. Even the 2 spectators beside him were left utterly astounded. This guy was truly powerful beyond belief. At this moment, several onlookers had noticed Jin Guihe, sensing that something was amiss. They gestured for the shimmering golden light to turn its lens towards him. But in the very next second, they were rooted in place, for Jin Guihe was conjuring fire magic, slowly advancing towards the crystal. He began to unleash a torrent of insults towards the man, mercilessly mocking his lack of parents while dragging the Jiang family into the fray. In that instant, the man could no longer contain his composure. Was this fool courting death? As he returned and laid eyes on Xia, memories of past anguish flooded back. In the final moments before Xia departed, to shield her from the wounds inflicted upon her by the Sword King clan, she lay in his embrace, her body wrapped in bandages. But now, she was devoid of any warmth. This was the greatest regret of the man's life, yet he felt utterly powerless to change it. Thus, upon his return, he resolved that such a tragedy would never occur again. He vowed to protect everything that belonged to Xia. When he acquired the ability of his subordinates, he discovered something peculiar: he could wield the anonymous divine technique. Yet, since his combat power hadn't reached 30, he could only mimic its essence. But as he delved into the history of this technique, he truly began to feel a sensation akin to the anonymous divine technique. At that moment, the man immediately entered a state of intense focus. He envisioned currents of electricity surging from his feet, and in an instant, countless arcs of lightning erupted around him. And in this moment, he shall become the thunderbolt, a step capable of shattering the heavens. Just as Jingui, he prepares to obliterate the crystal, a radiant golden light appears, thwarting his every move. Though he gestures for no interference, the shimmering golden light insists on intervention to boost its registrations. In the blink of an eye, Jingui focuses his energy, conjuring a colossal fireball that hurtles toward the Crystal Palace. At that moment, a soccer ball interrupts his attack. It turns out to be Diego Maside. He harbors a deep disdain for actions that disrupt the competition, and even more so for those who disrespect their teammates. Therefore, he must put a stop to Jingui's actions. Hearing this, Jingui is consumed by rage, but in the next instant, the man swiftly approaches from behind him. It seems you have much to say. At this point, fear grips him, leaving him speechless. Yet, just as he attempts to speak, he realizes he cannot utter a word, for the man has covered his mouth. Initially intending to whisk him away immediately, the man changes his mind. The connection would merely lessen the overwhelming pain. Even if he falls, it would simply be a decrease in level, something everyone understands. But from now on, the man will reveal to him an entirely different world. He raises his right hand toward Jingui, who has lost all his skills. Though he does not wish to lower his level, it appears he has provoked the man's wrath. In the next heartbeat, an excruciating pain floods his body, rendering him speechless, as if he had been screaming in agony from the outset. I haven't even begun yet. Now, Jingui is plunged into endless torment. Yet typically, using the connection to fight does not yield such a strong reaction. At this moment, Masida reminds him, pay attention to what the man holds in his hand. He is still healing Jingui. Could this be a side effect? In simple terms, this is akin to a friend helping. When the body is in an abnormal state, continuing to heal it can trigger an overload reaction. When overload occurs, the body bypasses the connection and suffers 100 damage. He is curious about how the man achieved this. Analyzing the misstep, only a select few skilled in martial arts can accomplish this feat, allowing their energy to flow into the body of their enemy. From this, the effect rends muscle and shatters bone. Yet at this moment, Jingui still cannot fathom why the connection fails to function. Then, in the blink of an eye, the man strikes him down, and the announcement of Jingui's elimination echoes through the air. The man glances toward the respawn point nearby. Even the shimmering golden light cannot believe the scene unfolding before it. A familiar transition plays out before their eyes, but this time, before he can plead for mercy, the announcement of his death rings out. It seems I'll need to adjust my power even more next time. In the very next moment, Jingui, he came back to life. The man slowly approached him, his voice low and menacing. People like you must pay for what you've done. Just then, an announcement rang out in front of them. Shia had supported the man with 10,000 GP. At that moment, he hoped his uncle would reconsider. After all, the most crucial thing right now was the battle. After a moment's thought, the man decided that the punishment for Jingui would end here. Yet, he wanted to know who had given him the audacity to act this way. At that moment, Jingui was so terrified that he didn't know what to say. He spilled everything. He revealed that the mission had been initiated by someone named Sword King 898. If the task of destroying the crystal was completed, a reward of 50,000 GP would be granted. However, the man found this very strange. After all, a regular person couldn't possibly expend 50,000 GP to initiate a mission. Perhaps he was part of a group. Clenching Jingui tightly, the man pressed for more information. But then, he realized the mission had been completed long ago. Could it be that the lightning strike just now had caused this mace? The bolt that erupted during the jump had completely wiped out all nearby enemies. It appeared this power was uncontrollable, which was why things had turned out this way. Ultimately, what he had unleashed was not just an ordinary divine technique. How shameful. Perhaps he needed more practice. The man then expressed his gratitude to Maktadat, feeling deeply appreciative for the protection of the crystal and promised to repay this kindness. However, he still had some personal matters to discuss with him. But just then, the entire arena shook violently. As the man stood there, bewildered, a colossal beast suddenly appeared before them. The crowd could only feel an unsettling aura radiating from the creature. Its roar echoed, and the most terrifying part was that it was devouring the undead. Simultaneously, from the creature's mouth spewed out several blobs of slime. To their shock, those blobs soon birthed new monsters. At that moment, golden light flickered, revealing the truth. This was a type of monster that only appeared in the Golden Tournament. It had the ability to decompose bodies and combine them into new creatures. It was the flesh golem. But why was it here? Could it be due to a special mission? A special mission regarding lost origins. As the man pondered, without the crystal to assist in annihilating the flesh, suddenly an announcement boomed. You have completed the mission of protecting 10 towers. A supplementary mission to halt the flesh golem has been added. Everyone around was in shock. They never expected the tournament to have such a supplementary mission to thwart the flesh golem army created by the destroyer Black Hand. With the crystal's aid, they could close the power gap with their enemies. You wouldn't actually want to complete this mission, would you? Keep in mind that these foes in the Golden Tournament are incredibly difficult to deal with. Even though the task seemed nearly impossible, the man still wanted to give it a shot, for beyond mere points, there was a greater challenge awaiting him. There's also an additional reward. In situations like this, it's clear that this is undoubtedly an epic quest. While everyone is discussing how to deal with the monstrous horde, the man signals them to hold their ground. He then grips the holy sword tightly and strides toward the beast. The flesh golem is an immortal creature, and it can only be defeated by destroying its core. However, its massive form and tough exterior make it extremely challenging to take down. Moreover, it is a gold-tier monster. As he approaches, the man commands, "Step aside, please, Mong." In the blink of an eye, he darts toward the monster with lightning speed. Before anyone can react, all that remains is a deep footprint pressed into the ground, along with the man slowly raising his holy sword. The fundamental techniques of the nameless divine art, heaven, earth, and humanity, are the very elements that constitute this power. Drawing on this, he wields strength akin to a mountain, ready to strike. In an instant, a slash descends, obliterating the beast. The players are left in awe as the flesh golem is vanquished. Quest for the 4th tower has been completed. As the man swings his sword, cleaving the flesh golem, a golden light emanates, imbued with a complex tapestry of emotions: fear, despair, anticipation, and longing. All these feelings intertwine seamlessly. Ultimately, this culminates in a profound respect. It's the first time he has felt this way since his birth. The man is destined to become a top-tier player in the future, and he yearns to document every detail about him. Meanwhile, man steps forward before them. From this moment on, the fate between him and Matedat begins. As other teams stand frozen in shock at the beast's brutality, the battlefield is left with only the man and the remaining players. It seems that the rewards for this mission are truly valuable. Experience and GP are received at triple the usual rate. Then, the man speaks to Matedat, saying, "If there's a chance, let's discuss further," as he wishes to share insights about innate talents. However, Matedat appears bewildered. The man simply states that this relates to magic and will elaborate later if the opportunity arises. Is he suggesting I change my class to a mage? If it were anyone else, he might not pay it any mind, but even after showcasing such overwhelming power, perhaps there is a class suited for him. They agree to discuss the details another time. Although the Golden Light wishes to join them, the man declines him. Without hesitation, he turns and walks away, the scene shifting. The man receives the mission rewards and is informed of the next quest. The side quest, Trails of the First Disciple, will be unlocked in the Silver Tournament. However, even after acquiring the crystal fragment, the man feels a sense of disappointment. The sacred blessing embedded within the crystal is a rare skill, one that only saints can wield. It has the power to elevate all abilities by 50. This skill is essential for high-level tournaments, yet it is limited to battles below silver rank. Meanwhile, his current level has reached 13. Although he still needs to ascend another 12 levels to qualify for the silver tournament, his attributes have already grown immensely powerful. Just as he began to feel a sense of confusion, the sacred sword beside him resonated with energy. Moments later, divine power gradually began to converge within the man's body. Yet, strangely, his attributes showed no signs of enhancement. At that very moment, the sacred sword emitted a warning. The strength being channeled cannot be sustained. The device will face annihilation. It appeared that the three sources of energy had spiraled out of control. To avert a dire outcome, the man had to absorb this energy back into his body. Elsewhere, at that moment, Wu Dian and Fu were lamenting the failure of their plan. He had officially initiated the mission of the Sword King Clan 898. He intended to seize this opportunity to examine the man's status window, but unfortunately, he fell short. If only he could succeed once, it would be a tremendous gain. It seemed he would have to don the dark cloak for a while longer. Although Wu Dian recognized that the man was a rare talent, his superiors made decisions solely based on factual evidence. Thus, to win him over, Wu Dian needed to acquire the man's status window and use the information gleaned from it to validate his worth. It appeared that the time had come to employ special methods, much like he had once done with the Sword King. Clearly, he had received 5 billion, yet he could only drive a rickety old car to school. This unfortunate situation led him into trouble. Just as his energy spiraled out of control, the determined man made a decisive choice to absorb it. After a period of relentless effort, he finally managed to calm that overwhelming surge of energy. At that very moment, an announcement echoed ahead, declaring that his combat power had increased by 1 point. Now, his power had reached 18. And at this moment, due to surpassing the threshold of 17, he could only absorb divine energy from artifacts of unprecedented rank from now on. This was simply outrageous, as high-tier artifacts were incredibly expensive. It seemed that for the foreseeable future, he should not hope to increase his divine power. Just when the man was lost in thought, someone mentioned that he had indeed received 5 billion as payment. But why did he look like this? Though he insisted that nothing was wrong, Xia didn't buy his words. She immediately helped him tend to his wounds. Honestly, she was at a loss for what to do with him. The scene shifted, bringing both of them to a barbecue restaurant for dinner. This was the first proper meal the man had eaten since his return. Xia believed that at the very least, the two of them should have a meal together since he had to return to school soon. After all, as the student council president, continuously resting wouldn't be beneficial. Moreover, the day of receiving his divine talent was fast approaching. In that moment, he suddenly remembered that August 22nd was Yin Xia's 18th birthday, and also the time he would receive blessings and divine talent. Although he hoped for an exceptional talent to change the dire circumstances, in the end, he only received a talent of rank F. In that instant, Seiya, who had endured so much, finally crumbled. If he were to tell her the truth, it would undoubtedly shatter her hopes. Therefore, the man could only gradually lower his expectations. However, starting tomorrow, he would have to return to school. Seiya nodded in agreement. So, starting tomorrow, he would drive Seiya to school. Although Seiya was somewhat skeptical of her uncle's intentions, in the end, she agreed. The scene transitioned to show both of them standing there in shock, as the underground parking lot was completely empty. Once, countless supercars had been parked here, but now not a single one remained. They suddenly wondered if those cars had been disposed of. Just as the two were bewildered, an old car caught the man's eye. It was Seiya's mother's vehicle. Yet those others had no right to take it away. Without hesitation, the man started the engine. Though the car was old, it was still drivable. Moments later, they arrived at the War Strategy Academy. At that moment, a burly man roared at them, demanding they move the car immediately. Although the man knew this old vehicle would attract attention, he hadn't expected the brute to arrive so quickly. Without delay, he stepped out of the car slowly. Mind your language. You are a guardian of students too. At that moment, the two individuals beside him recognized Think Chihan and snapped a photo, posting it online. This immediately sparked a frenzy of discussion among netizens. Meanwhile, Lum Haingwen was directing Li Yangung. They were heading to the combat academy. They began to tidy themselves up. After all, the last time Thin Chihan had turned down his invitation, this time he was determined to regain his dignity. Just wait, Thin Chihan. You've already instilled fear in everyone just by stepping into the arena. After all, you once single-handedly defeated a gold-level monster. Now that you're here, it truly feels like a powerful shockwave. As the man prepared to confront the towering figure, tension hung in the air. In an instant, a powerful punch soared toward the man, leaving the onlookers utterly astonished by the colossal strike that halted just inches from his face. Initially, he contemplated resisting, only to discover that he couldn't utter a word. The man pointed a finger and then stormed down, berating him. As a guardian of students, how could he be so rude? Even if he couldn't lead by example, he certainly shouldn't display such a crude demeanor. At that moment, a voice called out, "Yoon Seiya." It turned out to be Kim Hee-tron, Seiya's classmate, revealing their close bond. However, upon seeing Seiya riding in such a dilapidated vehicle, she immediately offered to give him a ride home after school. The man found himself in a moment of doubt. Did Seiya truly have such a good friend? It felt strange. Moments later, when Li Haiyan and the others arrived, they discovered that Thin Chihan had already left. At that moment, he mumbled complaints about his dissatisfaction. He feared that Thin Chihan might join other factions. Simultaneously, the image of Thin Chihan competing flashed before him, igniting an idea. From now on, he would keep a close watch on him. The scene shifted to Thin Chihan, who clenched his right fist tightly. In the next heartbeat, a powerful punch sent his enemy reeling. Following that, he swung his right leg and began gathering energy, unleashing the technique known as Thunder Step. In the blink of an eye, a bolt of lightning surged through the crowd, and the man swiftly eliminated all present foes. It seemed he was increasingly mastering this newfound power. At that moment, two individuals standing nearby began discussing amongst themselves. "Isn't that Thin Chihan? I heard he single-handedly defeated a gold golem in the bronze tournament." Encountering someone like him in the bronze tournament is akin to being struck by lightning on a clear day. As the announcement signaling the end of the match echoed, the man once again claimed the top position. Having secured the first place 5 times in a row, his experience in GP had increased by 200. Furthermore, since his level had reached a certain threshold, he had unlocked the dungeon in the game. Incredible. He never expected to unlock the dungeon so quickly, he thought. The dungeon was a sub-instance unlocked at level 15, and now he was ready to face new challenges. There, it wasn't just about fighting, one had to navigate many traps, mazes, and mysteries. However, an individual's abilities are limited, so it's often advised to collaborate with a team to overcome challenges. Yet right now, too many foes were targeting him. If the team sees him as their target in the dungeon, it would spell disaster. Although he had some inclination to join the guild, he thought better of it. After all, trying to escape from the guild later would not be an easy feat. At this moment, all he could do was wait. Once he reached silver rank, he would establish his own guild. He could only sense a familiar aroma, yet he was betting his entire life on it. Because he believed that Li Haiyan was 0, and the man needed to confirm this. Would his talent undergo any changes? Just after finishing the silver tournament, he was now having breakfast with Yoon Seiya. However, Seiya was taken aback by how good his uncle's cooking was. It was all thanks to his uncle's daily cooking practice beforehand. "Will you be riding home with your friend later?" Seiya shook his head, denying it. His enthusiasm was overwhelming, making Seiya feel uncomfortable. Ever since they got in the car, he had been overly concerned about Seiya's well-being. It felt a bit off. Moreover, there was another thing. Seiya found the warmth of his mother's car comforting, and of course, the man felt it too. The scene shifted to the man driving towards the Warrior Academy, and to his surprise, Li Haiyan and the others had been waiting for a long time. However, their expressions seemed a bit serious. When he inquired about their presence there, they simply replied that they had arrived early. Beside him, the anxious figure of a deep-voiced man hurriedly interjected that he needed to get to school. "So, could he spare a moment for me now?" After a moment, they stepped outside. But with so many eyes upon them, the man felt uneasy. Then, Li Haiyan began to address the main issue. Xing Jihan was the first to prompt him to chase after. Therefore, he had devised a rather clever plan, a platinum contract. Upon hearing this, everyone around immediately felt that their guild had been left behind. From the very start, he had played his trump card. Even the man couldn't believe how thoroughly he had prepared. The reason behind his scheme was to express his feelings for Xing Jihan. Hearing this, Li Jianing quickly grasped the situation. Everything was part of his plan, whether it was to deal with rival guilds or to win over Xing Jihan. At that moment, the man found it hard to believe, for the scent surrounding him was eerily reminiscent of Zero. Finally, he affirmed that Li Haiyan was indeed Zero. However, he was curious whether this talent had been affected in any way. Suddenly a thought struck him. He realized he couldn't just take without giving something in return, so he requested the man's phone number. In response, the man suggested a little wager. At this point, he had reached the level of failure, and his very first task would be the dungeon. Both of them were taken aback by this proposal. Unbelievably, he swiftly unlocked the dungeon. So what would the wager be? If he couldn't secure the top spot in the dungeon, he would join the division and hand over his phone number with both hands. Did he intend to participate without joining any faction at all? Could he truly brave the dungeon under the protection of a faction? But this would surely draw attention to him. Was this truly a challenge worth taking? Then, how should he place his bet? If he won, he'd get to see Li Haiyan's true state. He needed to confirm whether Li Haiyan's talent had undergone any changes. At this moment, the development still felt like a mere experience bar. For others, this was a rather awkward talent, but judging by his expression, it seemed that the talent remained unchanged. Yet, he still needed to verify everything for himself. After both sides agreed on the wager, the man immediately stepped into the battlefield. Things would wrap up swiftly. A blinding blue light emerged. This round's game was the Tomb of the Ruler. He had only just defeated the lowest-tier guards within the tomb. Nevertheless, this feat astonished everyone present, as he displayed an extraordinary power that rivaled that of his equally ranked opponents. As soon as the man entered the battlefield, an announcement about the dungeon echoed through the air, the difficulty of the gads. The Tomb of the Ruler was rated high, with numerous monsters expected to appear in this instance. However, he nearly encountered no intricate mazes or traps at all. The high difficulty had its reasons, for to complete this dungeon, every member of the team had to survive until the end. Thus, having a suitable team composition in this instance was absolutely crucial. At that moment, as the game announcement rang out, 3 team members appeared before the man. Not only were they well-equipped, but they also hailed from the same faction, the Black Guild. Clearly, they were thrilled to have Thin Chi Han as their teammate. They felt a surge of excitement, believing that this time they could definitely achieve a top-tier result. Meanwhile, the man quickly declared that he would lead the way. Although they felt a bit anxious, he reassured them that there was no need to worry, as he was very confident in his strength. Fortunately, this time no one was injured, otherwise, the cleanup would have given him a headache. Now, the journey of conquest could finally begin. Following the map's guidance, the man and his group swiftly, yet he felt no worries, for he was brimming with confidence in his own power. Fortunately, this time, no one was injured otherwise. The hassle of cleaning clothes would have driven him to frustration. "Let the conquest begin," he declared. Following the guidance of the map, he and his companions swiftly descended to the first underground level of the dungeon. Suddenly, countless guards began to emerge slowly from the depths below. Just as everyone was taken aback, the tomb's guardians stood towering before them, initiating a discussion about the use of magic to forge a path ahead. However, a man standing nearby immediately intervened. He gestured for everyone to simply follow his lead. In the blink of an eye, a throng of guards charged toward him, but he showcased his agility, skillfully evading all incoming attacks with grace. Almost instantly, he delivered a powerful punch that incapacitated the guard before him in a heartbeat. Then, a shadow flickered, and all the guards on that path were swept away entirely. The route leading to the Sovereign's tomb had 10 passageways, each manned by a small squad engaged in clearing out the enemies. Ultimately, All paths converged at the 7th underground level, where the boss room awaited. Currently, the team led by Think Chi-han held the top position, thanks to their overwhelming strength. Before long, they reached the 3rd underground level. Even the onlookers could hardly believe their eyes, for the guards of the tomb, renowned for their robust defenses, were being swiftly and effortlessly surpassed by Think Chi-han's team. At this moment, before the man, everything felt like dust being swept away. Simultaneously, Gojima Kazuo unexpectedly gifted him 10,000 GP. What was this guy really up to? It seemed as if Gojima was trying desperately to win him over. When online followers inquired if he intended to leave, he nonchalantly replied that he was utterly uninterested in such a notion. Immediately, they silenced Gojima Kazuo. Meanwhile, they had conquered the 3rd underground level without even realizing it. His teammates expressed their deep apologies for not contributing in any way. How wonderful it would be to cooperate with him endlessly, a seemingly simple remark that instantly raised the man's suspicions. Just moments later, they arrived at the 4th underground level. To their surprise, it was a straight pathway. Observing the gaps in the ground and walls, it appeared this place was rife with traps indeed. It seemed all the hazards were concentrated in this level. The man then inquired, "Can I accelerate here?" The impostor. The answer was a resounding yes, with no issues whatsoever. This time, the team, still under his command, prepared to navigate the myriad traps at a quicker pace. As he slowly made his way inside, the hearts of the crowd were already set on a plan. The Swordmaster Clan 787 had just issued a mission: complete the task of eliminating a specific target, and the reward would soar to a staggering 1 billion. At that moment, Gojima Kazuo sat back, casually watching the live broadcast, completely relaxed as he observed the unfolding drama. "What will you do this time?" Think Chi-han. The mission he announced had been accepted by many, yet they kept their intentions hidden. This meant that from the moment the operation began, his fate was sealed for failure. In this life-and-death battle, it seemed there was no escape for him. In this game of predestined failure, everyone raised their weapons, not against the enemy, but aimed at themselves. The reason was clear: they had received a special mission. As long as they prevented Think Chi-han from claiming the top spot, they would be rewarded with 1 billion. The moment the man made his move, just a second later, arrows were unleashed from the bows, aimed straight at them. Just as the mage prepared to cast a spell to stop the man, he signaled for them to hold back. With a casual flick of his wrist, all the arrows froze midair. This was the absolute domain of control. At that moment, astonishment washed over everyone, their faces etched with disbelief. What kind of power is this? The mage pondered. But in that instant, he noticed 2 members from his team moving behind him, weapons aimed directly at him. Did they intend to eliminate him? The moment he registered this, the man swiftly turned around. At that very moment, the mage began to unleash his spell. Just as the mage attempted to thwart their actions, a flash of lightning suddenly erupted in the corridor. By the time everyone realized what was happening, the man had delivered a precise punch that knocked the weapons out of the hands of the 2 traitors. Immediately after, he waved his hand lightly, and the 2 were forcefully pinned to the ground by an invisible power. It was perilously close to the end of the game. Fortunately, the man managed to halt everything in time. The 2 traitors began to turn on each other. "Did you also accept that mission?" "Shut up. Don't you realize?" At that point, the man understood why they had acted that way. It appeared that both had accepted the same mission, and as long as one of them died, the game would end immediately. This made the situation more dangerous than ever, and the man realized he needed to deftly control the situation to prevent a tragedy. "This is truly embarrassing," he said, feeling immense guilt as a member of the guild. But the man coldly replied, "There's no need to apologize, for you are no different from those 2. In fact, all the members of the guild present here had accepted that same mission." His words thickened the atmosphere with tension like a taut bowstring, ready to snap at any moment. As for how Think Chi-han came to know all this, it began with a streak of golden light. Since the battle commenced, he had been meticulously observing every move made by the others. It was during this observation that he noticed the Sword King clan, number 989, had released a special mission. This immediately aroused his suspicion, prompting him to carefully monitor the actions of the team members. Completing the mission of self-elimination would yield a reward of 1 billion. Thus, he decided to use the method of donations to inform the man. Although parting with 10 million GP made him feel a twinge of regret, as a loyal fan of Thin Chi Han, this trivial amount was inconsequential. He was willing to sacrifice for the sake of warning and protecting the one he admired. As the man casually waved his finger, in an instant, the sorcerer collapsed to the ground. No matter how much that person may hate him, wasn't spending 1 billion on such a mission extravagantly excessive for? He pondered, for ordinary people could never achieve such a feat. After some contemplation, he arrived at a conclusion. Behind that man, there must be at least a powerful force or some organization supporting him. But who could that person be, he thought, realizing that this individual was eager to witness the man's condition. Consequently, the man decided to alter his previous promise, raising the follower count to 1 million. This might just be the only way to counter the escalating pressure from his adversaries. The promise to claim the top spot in every battle remained unchanged. Observing his expression, it was clear that he perceived this as a positive challenge. Previously, he had worried about reaching 200,000 subscribers too quickly, but now that concern had evaporated. He swiftly bound everyone together, preparing for his next move. Moments later, he led them to the next floor. The scene shifted, and everyone's faces were painted with astonishment as waves of guards surged towards them. With just a gentle fist, the man unleashed a terrifying power, ready to crush everything in his path. This overwhelming strength left them in disbelief, unable to trust their own eyes. All he needed was to clench his fist, and instantly, every guard in the tomb was obliterated. This was the legendary Absolute Domain, a realm completely under his control. As the man guided everyone onward to the next level, a sense of discontent began to stir within them. Was this man truly at our level? The stark contrast in power led them to doubt whether they could ever stand alongside him. 10 minutes ago, despite their actions being thwarted by Thin Chi Han right in their tracks, the dissatisfaction lingered. Yet, in a heartbeat, the man swiftly pressed several points on their bodies. Instantly, they found themselves utterly powerless, collapsing to the ground. This left them in shock, unable to believe their eyes. How could he have done this, Gres? They wondered in bewilderment and panic. Could this be the legendary acupressure technique? They thought in astonishment, realizing that only the top martial artists could accomplish such a feat. Damn it, isn't he a healer? How could he possibly do this? It seemed Thin Chi Han was particularly sensitive regarding his niece. When someone attempted to mention it, he immediately cut them off. "Shut up," he commanded coldly. After that, he said nothing more, leading the group onward to the next floor. Thin Chi Han and the others finally arrived at the 6th underground level. Faced with a throng of guards encircling them, he was taken aback their numbers exceeded what he had imagined. In a moment of shock, the guards launched an immediate assault. Without hesitation, he swung his sword, accurately and powerfully blocking their attacks. The fight began, tension escalating as he continued to fend off this overwhelming wave of guards. Quickly, he hurled all his teammates behind him to shield them from danger. A figure darted past, and in the blink of an eye, he had dispatched every last guard. At that moment, the underground tomb began to tremble violently. Just seconds later, a powerful quake erupted, accompanied by eerie sounds from deep within, signaling that an even greater threat was drawing near. A legion of guards flooded the area, slowly advancing toward Thin Chi Han. Their eyes glowed with a fierce golden light, strikingly different from the previous guards. At that instant, a new mission was announced: eliminate all guards. Reward 1,000 achievement points. "That's incredible," he exclaimed. Immediately, he raised his hand, conjuring a protective shield for everyone. Then, he lifted his great sword and lightly tapped the shield, reinforcing it with the control attribute he had infused. This shield would protect them from the guards' attacks while giving them the time they needed to prepare for the next wave of enemies. "Now it's your turn," he declared. In an instant, the man skillfully activated his absolute domain, as if he were intimately familiar with this power. Anything that entered domain would be slowed to the point of near immobility. The guards, despite their numbers, now appeared feeble as their movements were significantly hindered. He merely had to tighten his grip, and all enemies within the absolute domain were crushed in an instant. This was a space entirely under his command, wielding a power beyond imagination. Surprisingly, all 8 uses of this ability were merely to enhance his own magical prowess. In the very next moment, a whirlwind of sword energy erupted from the ground. Shortly after, another announcement rang out cornered. "You have completed the special mission." He simply bowed his head before the boss in a gesture of respect, a simple act that enabled him to pass through the 7th underground level unhindered. Without a trace of difficulty, he opened the portal back to safety. After conquering the 6th underground level, they finally arrived at the 7th, where the final boss chamber awaited. Before them, the boss began to speak. "Have you come to welcome your impending doom, you loathsome marauders? The so-called gold you seek will ultimately be stripped away from you. I shall grant you everything you desire," he proclaimed, his voice dripping with challenge. "But to pass through the 7th underground level, you must bow in reverence to me, and every member of your team must participate." Just then, the man raised his hand gently, instantly freeing his comrades from all binds. In the next heartbeat, his eyes widened, and everyone was involuntarily drawn forward, suspended in the air. This phenomenon occurred because his sheer force had reached a staggering level of 18, dramatically expanding the area of effect and amplifying its power. All of them received a significant boost. Simultaneously, under the leadership of Thien Chi Han, the group gradually knelt before the boss. It seemed that the conclusion was near. The boss looked upon their subservience with satisfaction, his eyes gleaming with delight as he saw his demands being met. Shortly thereafter, the portal back home was opened. Although they had sacrificed 100 million in rewards, achieving the top position in the competition was still a monumental success. Thien Chi Han received a special mission to demonstrate sincere respect to the ruler. The reward for this mission was a staggering 5,000 achievement points and a sword belonging to the ruler. Would that colossal item also be my reward? Is this truly a gesture of reverence? The man couldn't help but contemplate how he might exploit the mage standing beside him. With a mere gesture, the man drew the mage into his grasp. "This is the sincere tribute from the King of Thieves to you," he declared, before flinging the mage aside. The moment the mage collided with the warhorse, a death announcement for the player flashed across the screen. "Sir." At that moment, the boss displayed a keen interest. "Is the King of Thieves referring to me? Indeed, this is the truest form of respect I can offer you. Beyond mere gold, I seek possessions of true value, like the sword you wield, the sword of the ruler. Stealing it from the boss truly reflects my respect for him, and it's the only way to complete this special mission." Hearing this, the boss immediately felt intrigued and praised the man's courageous act. "I will grant you my treasure because you have shown the utmost sincerity in your respect for me. I will accept it with gratitude, then let's see if you can take it, the phoenix sword of mine." The man simply swung his hand, leaving the boss in utter shock. With just one strike, he instantly shattered the divine weapon in the boss' possession. As the boss prepared to hand over the phoenix sword, the man stood ready to receive it. However, at that moment, a powerful wave of heat surged towards them. The temperature soared to a level that forced everyone to confront an unimaginable natural phenomenon. It seemed they could no longer endure. Though their deaths wouldn't matter much, if they perished, the weapon in the man's grasp would vanish with them. To avoid losing the weapon and achieve his goal, he had to swiftly address the situation before it was too late. The unbearable heat had melted the gold on the ground, and the teammates had to quickly move 2 of their own out of the danger zone. Instinctively, the man sensed that retrieving the phoenix sword in this situation was impossible. Before the man could shoot an arrow, he had to destroy his bow. The tale goes that long ago, a lost soul encountered a saint who pointed him toward a path to continue. From that moment, 3 types of martial arts emerged in the world, with precision being the most crucial among them. With a swift and powerful thrust, the man executed a decisive strike. Instantly, the boss reacted with surprise. However, in the next moment, a blow as mighty as the guiding hand of a celestial being shattered the man's bow immediately. The man replied, "My name is Tin Chi Han." The boss looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze and said, "You truly are an exceptional warrior." The boss remarked, "I look forward to our next encounter." The man replied, "So do I." Meanwhile, the online community buzzed with excitement. Even when they meticulously replayed each moment, they couldn't grasp what the man had done. It was evident that the celestial guiding technique not only possessed incredible speed, but also moved like an elusive sword energy that couldn't be caught. It seems that I am becoming more proficient in using the anonymous martial arts. Although it felt unfamiliar and too strenuous at first, with increased usage, I have become more adept. If I continue to develop like this, he will soon fully master it. Meanwhile, the announcement for the elimination of the trial at level 7 has appeared. Next, he needs to deal with the remaining members of the team. Under the bewildered gazes of the crowd, a shadow flickered by. Instantly, an announcement echoed through the air. Team member has perished. He had entered armed only with weapons from the dungeon, yet his presence left everyone in utter astonishment. Everyone was very surprised because this is an item from the bronze copy. But as you must have seen in the live stream, I once again won first place. According to our agreement, you will have to show me your status window. However, before doing that, he asked the man to put down the spear because it emitted a very powerful force. The screen shifted scenes and Li Haiyan presented his status window to the man, who was extremely excited, just as predicted. Li Haiyan possesses a talent called official reform. However, he seems to really dislike his talent. Despite having put in a lot of effort to acquire this talent, it turned out to be useless. He even thinks that he should not have attended that academy from the start. At that moment, the man smiled happily. Then, he took out his phone from his pocket and asked Li Haiyan for his phone number. The man simply wanted the phone number. After entering his own number into the phone, the man turned and left. However, in their memories, just a few months ago, the man was still someone who looked unkempt. They were surprised at how great the change was. And that was also the day Xiya would receive his abilities. His classmates began to speculate that Xiya would at least receive an Shrank ability. After all, his father is a Sword King with a 3 Shrank ability. His mother is a saint with 2 Shrank abilities, and recently, he also has an uncle who is becoming very prominent. Xiya felt anxious about the impending awakening of his abilities, even though he believed that abilities had nothing to do with bloodlines. Nonetheless, Shinju advised Xiya not to worry too much, assuring him that he could trust in himself and his preparations. Seeing this, Xiya felt a bit anxious, but still thanked Shinju for her support and encouragement. Shinju emphasized that the gift she had prepared for Xiya would be something special, and that was also the reason why she wanted Xiya not to stress too much about the upcoming event. All his abilities had been significantly enhanced, and everyone was eagerly anticipating the first performance of the Sword King since he joined the new team. Everyone was wondering how he would perform in this competition. Right after Tin Chi Han won the betting agreement, Li Haiyan is feeling very anxious. His father is pressuring him to get married as soon as possible, but he has no interest in an arranged marriage. What infuriates him the most is that he thought the matchmaking candidate would be the overweight person in the new security team, but it turned out to be a bald old man. It seems that wealth cannot solve all problems. "Aren't you going home to rest, poor?" He replied that he did not want to because he felt more comfortable here. Afterwards, he sent an apology to Lin Jiaying. It seems that Li Haingwen is grappling with numerous personal issues and feels dissatisfied with his current situation. Despite having great talent and the opportunity to develop his career in the game, he spends his time protecting others, which may leave him feeling unfulfilled in reaching his full potential. However, his dedication to safeguarding Li Haingwen reveals his generous heart and profound commitment, until he inherits the entire corporation. At this moment, Li Haiyan immediately declared that he would soon leave his family and forge his own path to wealth. "Is your method of creating wealth through betting? This time is different. I have the confidence to ensure my victory." Li Haiyan nodded in agreement upon hearing that it was a safe investment, given the predictions of many about the outcome of the match between Korea and Japan. Just then, Man Chi-han sent a message to Li Haiyan, the content of which left him completely astonished and speechless. He was once a top football star in the world, but the rise of Warnet caused his fame to plummet in an instant, ultimately leading to his wife leaving him and his child. Chi-han understood this predicament all too well. Although he was a renowned football star, the emergence of Warnet gradually diminished people's interest in sports, leading them to forget about football altogether. However, he was very curious as to why Chi-han wanted him to become a mage. As with his talents, he could enhance all items just like in football, couldn't he? Indeed, whenever he utilized football-like items, he could receive a 300-fold enhancement. Yet, he could never become a mage due to his unbelievably low magical energy. Meanwhile, the man immediately summoned the Arachne Jade. The Arachne Gem, with its remarkable elasticity and unique properties, is indeed the perfect equipment for a mage like him. Especially considering he was once the mightiest sorcerer in his past life, possessing such an item would unlock countless new opportunities for him in skill enhancement and strategic development. Yet, the exorbitant price made him hesitate. However, the man had long planned to gift it to him, as he had come here with a singular purpose to invite Mahid to join his guild. But can you afford the price of this item? Of course, I will soon earn much more. Meanwhile, Li Haiyan gazed at the information in his hands, falling into deep contemplation as Saint Chi and Hanjiang had informed him that Country Joy would crush H5 with a score of 31. Just then, the Sword King slowly stepped onto the arena. Following that, Korea and Japan would commence their fierce battle. With a mere flick of his sword, the Sword King astonished everyone present, for he had used his blade to freeze instantly, piercing through his own chest. As the match between Korea and Japan commenced, Chi-han had confidently placed his bet with Mahid. To everyone's astonishment, Korea secured victory in the opening clash. Yet, Mahid remained skeptical about this outcome. After all, Japan had the strongest Sword King as their witness. The man exuded an overwhelming power. With an assertive gesture toward the screen, he declared, "Let us witness the results for ourselves." The screen shifted, and the match officially began. The rules were simple: defeat all opponents. The battle consisted of 5 rounds. The first to win 3 rounds would be declared the victor. Subsequently, the Sword King issued a command to everyone, "Stay close to me." However, the crowd refused to comply. They had no intention of following the Sword King's lead, as his involvement had forced their main guild to withdraw from the fight. Nevertheless, the Sword King felt no regret. At that moment, a beam of light descended from the heavens, directly striking the Sword King. It turned out that the Korean contenders had initiated the first attack. As everyone decided to launch a full-scale assault on the Sword King, he unexpectedly swung his sword, instantly repelling them. The crowd's expressions turned to disbelief. The Sword King had frozen his own chest with his bare hands. "If you refuse to follow my command, then I see no need to participate in this match." Shortly thereafter, news broke that Korea had claimed the first kill. The crowd was left astounded. Even Mahid was taken aback. He was curious about how Chi-han had foreseen this, but the man revealed that such information was confidential and urged him to focus on the current match. As anticipated, Korea swiftly triumphed in the first round. Due to the Sword King's unexpected actions, Lee Jinwoo from Korea was awarded MVP. Meanwhile, the audience expressed their discontent with the Sword King's behavior. After all, as a representative of a team, such conduct in public was utterly unacceptable. It was truly a disgrace to the team. In response, the Sword King retorted, "I cannot bear your childish antics. You are nothing but a bunch of amateurs lacking professionalism. I refuse to waste my time with you. If you don't acknowledge me as your captain, I will never participate in this match again. Either join me in victory or continue to endure the defeats you just faced." Reluctantly, they opted for the first choice. With the commencement of round 2, the Sword King stood once again in the arena. Would he repeat his previous mistakes? But soon, they sensed something was amiss. For this time, the atmosphere was palpably different. Just as they prepared to defend, a swift and agile strike was unleashed, instantly taking 2 members of the team out of the equation. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, had the Sword King finally geared up to fight for real, he simply triumphed over the entire betting pool, leaving everyone present in awe as he accurately predicted the score of both teams. After the Sword King showcased his true power with a single strike, he swiftly eliminated the 2 opponents in front of him within just 2 attacks. The Sword King immediately leveled the playing field. In no time, the scene shifted to the 4th round of the battle. In the previous round, he had crushed everyone with his overwhelming strength. However, this round would prove to be far from simple. The warrior launched a ferocious assault against him. Even the mages standing nearby poured every ounce of their energy into the fray. In an instant, the Sword King found himself ensnared by chains. But just as everyone braced for a full-scale attack, the Sword King relaxed the long sword he held tightly in his left hand and swiftly countered the warrior's onslaught. As doubts lingered in his mind, the Sword King suddenly unleashed a powerful force, sending the warrior flying. Meanwhile, while the mage pondered how to reinforce the chains, the Sword King quickly closed the gap, and with a surge of energy, he delivered a decisive strike that eliminated the mage from the battle. Just as 2 members were about to rush in to assist, the nearby bodyguards immediately blocked their path. "Don't underestimate me." Meanwhile, the Sword King faced a barrage from above, remarking, "You truly are a chaotic bunch. Did you join the Empire just to show off? Impressive, indeed. If only your abilities matched your boasting." Hearing this, he instantly unleashed all of his energy, and in an instant, a thunderous power descended. It was truly magnificent. Just in time to test my latest skill. As the Sword King raised his sword, a colossal blade fell from the sky, detonating the arena. While everyone watched in disbelief, the Sword King single-handedly claimed victory in the entire match with a score of 3-1. Meanwhile, Mahid, who was observing the battle, appeared utterly astonished and asked, "How did you know the score so precisely?" The man merely replied, "All of this is but a dream." Although he had earned a considerable amount of money from this, one thing surprised him compared to his previous life. The Sword King seemed to have become significantly stronger. Even with the mysterious divine technique he possessed, defeating him was no easy feat. After all, the guy still wielded level 3S items, but that didn't matter much. No matter how powerful the Sword King became, all I need to do is surpass him. That day will come soon enough. He simply gifted a regular soccer ball, yet earned the trust of the strongest mage. And without hesitation, he immediately joined the guild. After the match ended, Li Haiyan was extremely astonished because he had actually won and earned over 200 million. However, when the final calculations were made, he ended up losing more than 20 million. Previously, he had placed an additional bet, believing that Japan would defeat China with a score of 30. Therefore, he bet 200 million. The final outcome was that he ended up losing more than 20 million. The man gifted a magic orb to Ma Tai-dich and invited him to collaborate. He was puzzled as to why the man had chosen him, a nobody. He wondered if he really was that valuable. "Of course, I believe that my choice will not be wrong." Afterward, the man pushed the magic orb towards him. "I believe that you will definitely become the strongest magician. This gift is the greatest affirmation of your future. I need you, Ma Tai-dich." He immediately fell into deep thought. Because it had been a long time since anyone had said such things to him, he greatly missed this feeling. And now, the arrival of Thin Chi Han brought him hope. Therefore, there was no reason to refuse this invitation. "I am very much looking forward to collaborating with you, Chairman. I will do my best to meet your expectations, so I am looking forward to your performance." The scene shifts to the tournament where Donglam Jianin is fighting alone amidst countless difficulties. At this moment, 2 opponents are charging towards him. In an instant, he swung his arm in a mystical and swift motion, quickly defeating them. Right after, an announcement rang out: Lam Jianin won first place in this match. Although it was an impressive achievement, for him it still wasn't enough. He needs to become stronger. Whether it's the outstanding Sword King in the match or the rising star Thin Chi Han, he still has a long way to go compared to them. To achieve this, he must strive even harder. Meanwhile, on the other side, looking at his phone, the Jia felt extremely disappointed. Although Kim Hee-chao appeared worried for him, he still tried to act strong. At that moment, a loud noise interrupted their conversation. In front of them was a crowd of reporters. At the same time, a man was rushing towards the Jia. Feeling his body more agile, he realized that to find Jia's position, he had to climb to the highest point of this city. The scene shifts again, looking down at the bustling crowd below. Thin Chi-han couldn't help but reminisce about the past. In his previous life, he often stayed aloft. Now, he realizes how crucial the power of the Antha-chan is at this moment, even though Thin Chi-han has never fought with him. In reality, when Earth began facing destruction, the top-ranked Sword King suddenly disappeared. Although he doesn't know what happened, he is certain of one thing: the Sword King of this era remains as powerful as during the peak of his previous life. Therefore, at all costs, he needs to become stronger and quickly master the anonymous divine skill. Meanwhile, an elderly man is trying to restrain the actions of the crowd, but they are relentless. They even believe that the Sword King became what he is because of the existence of Huyan-jia. Just when tensions were about to escalate, a man slowly approached the crowd. With a surge of magical energy in his hands, the next moment, everyone was pushed back by an invisible force. Do you dare to lay a hand on a journalist? Aren't you afraid of the backlash from social media? Of course, I'm very concerned, he replied. That's why I've held back so much today. This is your first time, so I choose to forgive you. You should count yourselves lucky to still be alive. He then turned to Xia, assuring her that there was no problem anymore and it was time to go home. After thanking everyone, the man helped Xia away from the chaos. Meanwhile, Shiju couldn't hide her joy and burst into laughter. It was then that everyone realized he was actually the granddaughter of the chairman of the Thainguin newspaper. In Shiju, it seemed that Xia was completely done with everything. Elsewhere, the Sword King publicly declared that he had no daughter. It appeared this was the reason the reporters flocked to him, igniting a furious response from Thin Chi-han. Yet, he had no idea how to calm Xia's emotions. Just then, Xia suddenly asked if his previous promise still stood. So you only found the Shadow Queen, he nodded in affirmation. He then took out his phone to confirm, yes, I have found the Shadow Queen. He had merely breached a barrier, yet it sent ripples through the online community. He was the first to break the rules, shattering a barrier specifically designed for the competition that could thwart any attack from diamond-level players. As soon as Xia found the Shadow Queen, he expressed his views. He was the most viable candidate. Compared to the Fairy Queen seated on her throne, Xia felt he resembled the Shadow Queen more. He then sent an image to his uncle, starting with his eyes. The whites of his eyes were black, an extremely rare occurrence. This time, there was something even stranger. Before the competition began, he always kept an eye on the leader and observed his uncle every time. Xia meticulously reviewed each match and discovered that those he had observed consistently ranked at the top. It was as if he could see the future, and more importantly, the shadow beneath his feet. Although the image quality wasn't great, he sensed something was amiss. This truly seemed like a significant discovery. He then expressed his gratitude to Xia and decided to confirm it again during the next competition. But what was his dream? As long as it's what you say, I will fulfill your request. So, my dream is... The scene transitions as the man returns to the arena, and today he will defy the rules, breaking through the barrier in the stands to confirm whether that spirit is indeed the Dark Queen. Let's see if he truly is the Dark Queen. In less than a minute, the man has completed 10 kills. This is enough to keep him in the first place. Next, he needs to find a way to break through this barrier, but that won't be an easy task. After all, his power is on par with diamond-ranked players, capable of blocking all skills and attacks. Even the words of the Wanderer cannot pierce through this shield. To unveil his true face, he must create a breach. At this moment, he slowly gathers his strength. Despite wielding an incredibly powerful weapon, he can't unleash its full potential with just a single punch. With a sudden surge of power, he launches the Divine Finger Strike, yet it inflicts no damage on his opponent. However, the online community erupts in excitement as Thin Chi-han has truly done it. He doesn't stop there, but fiercely unleashes a flurry of attacks. Before long, the colossal barrier has a small breach created by him. At the same time, he suddenly activates the wandering eyes, for he must see the true face of the one behind it before the shield recovers. But right after that, he stands frozen in place, as he finds himself lost in another realm. Blinding white light illuminates behind him. When he turns around, a sense of calm washes over him as a gigantic pair of eyes stares intently at him. He has just awakened the weakest FG ability, yet he is met with harsh taunts from the crowd after encountering the Dark Queen at the bronze level. At this moment, the man has been lying at home for 3 days and nights, unable to regain his composure, because that guy is truly terrifying. With a bronze-level body facing such an opponent, he finds himself utterly defenseless. Even with the same strength as before his return, he might not be able to overcome this challenge. The strength of that guy could provide significant assistance. Subsequently, he opens the achievement shop. Based on the achievement points he had previously obtained, the shop has been upgraded to level 5, and a new feature has been added, the addition of zodiac constellations. Thus, he can choose from more constellations. But for now, shopping is still too premature. After all, Earth is currently in the beginner's tutorial phase, so it isn't necessary for the time being. Therefore, he chooses to increase his title position and begins to assess his current status. Unbeknownst to him, the man's level has risen to 22, nearing the silver player rank, just 3 levels away. The reason he opts to enhance his title is that he is about to acquire the title of the Divine Weapon Heir. When the power of Thin Chi-Han reaches 30, he will learn the nameless divine art. In the process of connecting with the war god, all he needs to do is defeat him to earn that title. This is also a title he has consistently wielded in his past life. No matter what happens, he must swiftly master the nameless divine art, for soon he will face that man. The scene transitions to a man leading Shia in search of an empty room, though it seems Shia still feels the space is too cramped. This is understandable, as she had previously lived in the royal palace. Yet even the man could not anticipate that her dream was to move to a new home. It appears that her previous dwelling had caused her much pain. To quickly liberate her from such an environment, the man resolved that they needed a larger house. Since Shia is about to become a player, she requires a bigger space to set up her connection equipment. Of course, the man agreed without hesitation. He had always been a loyal fan of Thin Chi-Han and was immensely grateful to the man for taking care of Shia. Although he had once been a member of the Sword King clan, he chose to sever ties with the clan when the Sword King departed. Nevertheless, he remained deeply concerned for Shia. Now, seeing her so strong, he felt reassured. At the same time, he sent her heartfelt wishes, certain that she would awaken a great power. Speaking of powers, after that battle, everyone's gaze turned towards Shia. Once she awakens her FG power, she will undoubtedly face relentless criticism. Thus, the man silently resolved to temporarily shield her from the crowd, especially from the reporters. Meanwhile, Jin Shiju had arranged for reporters to interview Shia on the day she awakened her powers. Even Jin Mao believed he was up to no good. But why did he harbor such hatred for her? Because without the emergence of the War King, Shia had no right to stand beside him. If she were to awaken that pathetic power, it would truly be a great joke. But do you really think you can defeat Thin Chi-Han in the competition war? Regardless of anything, I completely disregard that man. My father is the strongest Sword King, having awakened a 3S level power. The power he awakened was merely a measly S level. With only 14 hours left until Shia's awakening, Jin Shiju was pleading with Shia, hoping she would agree to an interview once she gained her powers. However, Shia promptly declined. Although Jin Shiju insisted it was all for her benefit, Shia didn't want to be entangled with him. She turned and walked away, finally revealing her true self. Even if Shia didn't want to be interviewed, he had already devised a plan to cope. Tonight was the moment Shia would awaken her powers. If she awakens that FG power, it would indeed be rather dull. At that moment, Shia fell into deep thought, for up until now, she had endured a great deal. In truth, she had long known Jin Shiju's true face. One day, she inadvertently overheard a conversation between Jin Shiju and others. Jin Shiju approached her with a purpose. He simply wanted to kick her further down when Xia was already desperate. If she were to gain FG abilities, it would surely be quite the spectacle. Upon discovering his true intentions, the realization hit Jia like a thunderclap, leaving him in shock for a fleeting moment before anxiety took hold. He feared that he might truly receive an F-grade talent. Throughout the talent awakening ceremony, he desperately prayed for any talent, any at all. As long as it wasn't an F ability, he hoped to receive something worthwhile. But when the red light flared up, the scene before him widened his eyes in disbelief. Yes, he had indeed acquired FG abilities. It was as if everything had come to a tragic end. Time rewound to 5 hours before the awakening of his powers. At that moment, the man was on his way to the powerhouse. To ensure that Xia wouldn't be disturbed, he pulled every string he had to disperse all school staff and reporters. He even arranged for senior staff to remain vigilant. After all, the higher-ups were quite anxious about Xia's awakening ceremony. It seemed he owed her yet another favor. Soon after, he was stationed outside the house, keeping a close watch. Though he was deeply concerned for Xia, all he could do at this moment was protect her fiercely. At the same time, he hoped that this gift would bring her a sliver of comfort. Time swiftly passed, and just 5 minutes before Xia's power awakening, Ji was leading reporters to interview Chi Han, who was caught off guard. How did they manage to get in here? Of course, it was with the help of a familiar face. He then boldly expressed his intentions. He was there to interview Teja. However, Chi Han flatly declined this proposal, with neither side willing to budge. Seeing Kim Hee-cho feign thoughtfulness, he asked, "What about this?" Chi Han, at level 27, had been ambushed by a mysterious foe at level 50 while protecting his niece. In an instant, a powerful punch struck the back of the man's head. Who the hell is this guy? The man merely opened his status window, but it left Kim Hee-cho completely astonished. Although he possessed an F-grade talent, he displayed power that was utterly disproportionate. Just as the blonde-haired assailant was about to strike Chi Han, he began to feel an unsettling sense of arrogance. "Stay right there, don't move," he said, as he intended to take good care of Thejia. Upon hearing this, the man instantly erupted in anger. "Who the hell gave you permission to mention him?" Almost immediately, a powerful fist crashed into the blonde's face, yet it seemed to cause no significant harm. This was because his talent was reinforcement. Simultaneously, both sides began to retaliate against each other. Just as the blonde was about to deliver a decisive blow, the man landed a solid punch to his chin, then gripped his hair with fierce determination. In no time, golden-haired youth was lifted into the air, his predicament akin to that of a bullied child. "It'll make you remember this day forever," the man declared with a sinister grin. In that moment, he swung his arm, sending the golden-haired boy hurtling toward Kim Hee-cho. Witnessing this scene, a cold sweat instantly broke out on his brow. On the other side, although he felt disheartened after gaining his level talent, he quickly steeled himself. He understood that wallowing in despair would solve nothing. It was time to leave the talent hall behind. However, peering through the window, he couldn't shake off the anxiety. He knew all too well that inflexible talent was worthless in the arena of the grand tournament, where one would truly discover their potential. What could this explanation possibly mean? Just after stepping out of the talent hall, he was struck with shock. The man was toying with the golden-haired boy's hair, leaving him perplexed about what was unfolding. Meanwhile, Kim Hee-cho was berating the man, even invoking the name of his grandfather, chairman of a major newspaper. Yet, the man remained unfazed. Even if he could manipulate the media to spread false information or humiliate them in various ways, he remained unshaken. It would be best for them to leave H-Blog, but Kim Hee-cho was far from safe, for he would have to pay dearly for his actions. As the man swung his arm, thousands of flames surged toward Kim Hee-cho. "If you can't reflect on your own shortcomings, remember this experience," he warned ominously. Instantly, a torrent of fire erupted toward him. Before long, the flames illuminated the entire talent hall. The scene shifted. Teja was overwhelmed with anxiety. He feared that Kim Hee-cho would retaliate against them through the media. Yet, the man reassured him, "Don't worry. A major newspaper like that wouldn't act rashly over Kim Hee-cha's affairs. Besides, what's most important right now is what talent you possess for the grand tournament. And level talent, he stated, just as predicted. The man then opened his status window, signaling Taejia to observe closely. But Taejia wore a look of disbelief, for the man's talent was also rated F. Glancing at the data above, these were unique attributes that could only be acquired through hidden conditions. As you can see, talent level doesn't represent everything, as one can still acquire hidden unique attributes beforehand. This could lead you down a promising path. Although he had awakened the worst talent, FG, it astonished the man, for before his return, he had ranked second in the world. Just as he handed an item to Taejia, he realized that this talent could enhance his level for the grand tournament. It would require participating in 50 more battles to level up. Currently, with each battle participated, the growth attribute increased by 100, and this talent would ensure that. There is another secret that no one knows. Before returning to the world's second largest player, Jin Jinhua's talent was the grandeur of the late city. Even Sheng Jihan found it difficult to believe in the world's second largest talent. This again led the clan into despair, just as the man had predicted through the Agrate glasses. He could see the true nature of the talent. That was the tool the man had repaired before the day the clan awakened their talent. Merely having the ability to upgrade is astonishing enough. Furthermore, the growth rate is doubled, meaning that your training efficiency will be twice that of others. With this advantage, the clan can quickly obtain the rare attributes mentioned by the man. Upon hearing this, Sega was stunned on the spot. Sheng Jihan believed that he would definitely become a top player. Now Sega was finally so happy that tears streamed down his face because he had been waiting for a long time. When Sword King left H-Blog and left him, everyone was furious with him. After all of this, Sega became even stronger. I am no longer the woman abandoned by the Sword King, but a player named Yin Sega. But I think this man is amazing, as if he knows what will happen. Let's go to the birthday party together. I've been in line for a long time to get this meal. On the side, Jin Shiju was very angry because Sheng Jihan burned his hair and eyebrows. Now the butler rushed in with a video. It was this video that led him to find a weakness he could exploit, which was the expression on Sega's face, a crying expression that was perfect for writing this article. Next, he will take complete revenge on them. The long-lost Jin Guangliu fell into contemplation, feeling empty because he was not selected by Sheng Jihan, whether it was the mage or the other three teammates. Jing Wangflo always helps Sheng Jihan clear obstacles, so he believes he will definitely become Sheng Jihan's manager. In order to achieve this, he hopes this man can read his paper. In this game, he quickly eliminated a group of monsters, and his teammates next to him watched everything. Lightning struck the game, and Sheng Jihan won first place. Suddenly, this person's military rank reached level 25, and now he can participate in the Silver Upgrade War. He has been living in fear of the first place. He won the title of Copper Empire and entered the top 100 globally on August 25th. In this battle, you will have the opportunity to level up to Silver. The characteristic of the top 100 battles is that only one survivor can stop fighting. The Upgrade War is a survival battle. The match would only conclude when one person remained, and this was the pivotal stage to determine who would rise to the top of the rankings. While Shen Jihan observed the list before him, he fell into contemplation. The nation's top contender, Barun Williams, was someone even he never expected to face so soon. It was truly a troubling situation, as he had never managed to defeat Barun. He had only just unlocked 3 energy points, yet the Divine Martial School had stripped him of his inheritance and robbed him of all his talents. In fact, the sole factor that had propelled him into the top 100 was his possession of a unique attribute. Of course, combat power was also a unique attribute, but before unlocking the nameless technique, he was merely a blend of strength, endurance, and speed. Strength was a force that transcended reality, enhancing magical power and bolstering will. Yet, even so, he had to confront the disparity in levels. The strength wielded by Barun belonged to a different echelon. Strength was a distinct attribute, proportional to magical power and divine power, and Barun had been born with formidable magical prowess. Thus, he possessed at least double the strength of Shen Jihan. No matter how strong the man's willpower was, it was futile against absolute strength. After all, Baran had secured his position as the world's #1 simply by relying on his strength attribute. He wasn't merely relying on luck. To maintain this position, he had already harnessed diamond-level magical power since the Bronze Age. Facing him was akin to courting death. Therefore, he had to swiftly unlock the nameless technique. The scene transitioned. The man gazed into the information displayed on the screen before him, lost in deep thought. At this moment, he found it hard to believe his own eyes. After all, this was a stark contrast to the image he had always held in his mind. Just then, a call rang out. To his surprise, it was Li Haiyan. She immediately pressed him for the score of the upcoming match. This left the man feeling perplexed. On the other side, the two were discussing this issue, and at that moment, Li Haiyan appeared somewhat flustered, as Shen Jihan had also made it into the global top 100, and Barun from their nation would be participating in this match. Yet, Shen Jihan urged Li Haiyan to place a bet on him. After all, this was Barun, an incredibly powerful foe, so Li Haiyan was not entirely convinced by the man. Even though Shen Jihan had accurately predicted the score previously, after careful consideration, she still thought that choosing round 8 would be the safer option. But how had he been training lately? At this moment, he was contemplating reporting his results to Li Haiyan. The scene shifted as the man took a deep breath, immediately ramping up his combat power to 30. All the necessary preparations had been meticulously laid out. Next, he would harness the nameless technique alongside activating the Eye of the Wanderer. Soon after, the wandering divine martial spirit appeared before him. Though he could see nothing, he sensed that this was eerily reminiscent of their previous encounter. At last, we meet again. Immediately, he acknowledged the man as his heir. Then, countless streams of energy began to converge upon the man, who was accepting the nameless martial skill. Normally, the wandering god would set forth his conditions at this moment, but he did not. Just as he thought everything would unfold smoothly, just then, a warning blared from ahead. The wandering god frowned. Because the man had opened 3 dantians, the wandering god began to grow cautious. Afterwards, he immediately withdrew the nameless martial inheritance and turned back towards his path. At this moment, the man was still unaware of what had transpired. However, when he glanced at his status window, disbelief washed over his face. Previously, Think Chi-Han ranked 7th in the world, but now, just before the upcoming top 100 competition, all his talents had inexplicably vanished. She only appeared in the top 100 battle, yet she left the man utterly astonished, as this was something that had never occurred in his past life. Just as Think Chi-Han lost his talents, Shiya stood before him with a relaxed expression, having just completed her withdrawal process. Finally, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was his decision after awakening his talents. After all, Shiya had decided to receive training from the man, so there was no reason for her to remain at the academy. While he had resolved Shiya's issues, what about his own? Regardless, the top 100 competition would commence tomorrow, yet he had lost the wandering eye. And worse still, he could not fully inherit the nameless martial skill. At this moment, he only felt a sense of discomfort. Beside him, Shiya seemed to notice that he was unwell. Is it because of the top 100 competition? Not really. He was also concerned about the changes within himself. The future was now. Shiya's fingers gently encouraged the man. You will definitely win the match. After all, you always find a way to solve problems. At that moment, a sharp pain suddenly pierced through the man's left eye. Damn it, what's happening? The scene shifted, and at that moment, Think Chi-Han sensed something was amiss with his left eye. Thus, he tried to summon his power to expel it. Immediately after, countless Lijiang crystals shattered, and a wave of intense pain crashed over him. Simultaneously, a notification echoed in his mind. You have erased the traces of the wandering god. The player has been completely liberated from the dominance of the stars at this very moment. As the man struggled to comprehend what was happening, another notification rang out. From now on, you can receive support from other stars. What does this mean? Does it imply that the wandering god had always obstructed me from gaining strength from other stars? Damn it, I initially thought the lack of conditions was due to his self-sacrifice. Little did I know, he had been clinging to my body all along. Suddenly, the wandering god vanished without a trace. The man found it perplexing. He was merely a minor wandering god. Are you afraid of a fellow player? Although the man was deeply suspicious of this, he realized that the power of the divine martial arts could no longer be used. However, fortune smiled upon him, for this was an opportunity to seek out other stars. And just then, suddenly a quest appeared before him, epic-level quest Seek and Challenge the Dark Queen. The reward was 50,000 achievement points along with the Dark Queen's attention. But for now, the most pressing matter remained the battle ahead. After all, he had to fill the void left by the divine martial arts. Fortunately, an idea struck him. The scene transitioned as the official Top 100 competition commenced. The game would continue until only one player remained. As soon as the man appeared, he became the target of everyone. With the official match underway, everyone immediately charged to attack him. Yet the man remained calm. With a single strike, he swiftly eliminated two adversaries. Faced with the fierce assault of his foes, he promptly opted for defense. At the same time, a purple flame surged towards him. The man nonchalantly waved his right hand, redirecting the flame towards the enemy beside him. Following this, he crouched and lunged toward the mage. As the mage unleashed a barrage of fire spells, the man retaliated with a powerful punch that sent his opponent flying away. He dismissed the chaos around him. The strength of these opponents was fundamentally equal. While contemplating how to gradually deal with them, a blade suddenly appeared before his eyes. In an instant, the man swiftly raised both hands to block it. He was astonished to find that the assailant was none other than Manhwa Recap. But why was she here? She was only supposed to appear in the top 100 battle, yet her presence left the man utterly shocked. This meant that the future had changed, and it seemed she had grown significantly stronger. Confronted by Lin Jiaying's unexpected arrival, the man found himself in a state of disbelief. After the emergence of the Space Alliance, defeat equated to death, and the man vividly recalled the final match at the Northeast Asia National Tournament, where the resilient Yoon Se-jin participated as the Sword King. However, the South Korean contestants collectively refused to compete out of fear. Thus, as the candidate for the next Sword King, he bore this heavy responsibility alone. Manhwa Recap. But what puzzled the man was that this individual had never even ranked in the top 100. Why was he here? Could it be that the future had been altered? The man quickly blocked his opponent's assault and then unleashed the Thunder Spear, striking him directly in the face and sending him flying dozens of meters away. Simultaneously, the man wielded his spear against Lam Jiam, but the opponent adeptly dodged, leaving the man in awe of this formidable opponent's strength. Was he truly this powerful? Faced with the lethal strikes from Lin Jiaying, he now realizes just how much this guy has truly matured. Gone are the unnecessary movements, every blow is more powerful, and now he's become significantly quicker. His curiosity is piqued. During their time apart, what has he been through? Time rewinds as he conveys to Li Haiyan that he has made it into the top 100 of the bronze tournament, hoping that Li Haiyan can help him upgrade his gear. Though he hesitates to admit it, the equipment has indeed impacted his strength. After countless training sessions, he realizes that this sword is just too heavy for him. Li Haiyan is puzzled as to why this conversation is happening now. It's surprising that a mere arrow could affect his power so much. Without delay, Li Haiyan sets out to find a suitable legendary sword for him, one that will allow him to unleash his full potential in the upcoming match. Li Haiyan believes that as long as he is determined, he will surely defeat Thin Chi Han. Ultimately, he just needs to prove his abilities. Let's shine brightly in the top 100 tournament. Back in the present, as he faces the relentless onslaught from Thin Chi Han, he realizes his own strength is merely half that of Thin Chi Han. In this situation, he stands no chance of victory. He has also glimpsed into Lin Jiaying's thoughts, yet he cannot comprehend why he acts this way. After all, as long as he challenges those weaker than him, he will surely endure. Just then, he sees Thin Chi-han open his mouth. Could it be he knows he fundamentally cannot win against Thin Chi-han now, nor likely in the future? But if he gives up now, it would all come to an end. If he cannot surpass Thin Chi-han, then he will exert all his strength to follow in his footsteps. Indeed, he is that kind of person, fully aware of his inability to win, yet he still chooses to continue fighting. In his previous life, he fell at the hands of the Sword King, but this time he has entered the Bronze Wall. He's even more curious if he can change his future upon returning. He has long considered that he needs talents like Lam Jayam in his team. Meanwhile, Lin Jiaying, despite revealing the secret technique Manhwa Recap, a moment later, countless figures aim their bows at him. Thin Chi-han slowly raises his right hand. Although he's not fully accustomed to this long-haired style, he clearly remembers a technique exceptionally suited for the current situation: the 3 talents, 5 elements, Emperor sweeping the heavenly army. He merely obstructs the fiery onslaught of magic, leaving the first-ranked team of the 8 circles in sheer awe because he uses the unique 8 circles. Immediately after, Thin Chi-han unleashed a sweeping attack on the heavenly army, leading the 3rd-ranked nation, Clark. They have found the 8 circles during the competition and intend to capture him, but Balan pays them no mind. He then waves his hand, taunting them, "You're no match for me," before they charge at him. In an instant, he raised his hand and absorbed little Clark into his grasp. A surge of crimson energy erupted, forcing everyone behind him to retreat. Facing the 2 ambushers, he merely waved his hand, and they were instantly struck down. At this moment, he was an unstoppable force. Just then, the commotion created by Thin Chi-han caught his attention. He realized that Thin Chi-han was certainly not a mere street thug, unlike the encounters he had faced before his return. Moments later, Baron appeared before the man, revealing himself as the infamous Thin Chi-han. As the two began conversing, Baron launched a surprise attack, but the man effortlessly evaded it, countering with a thunderous strike known as Thiam Thien Loi Bol. Yet he hovered in the air, witnessing the spell descending upon him while Thin Chi-han pressed his assault. However, he gracefully sidestepped the attack. At that moment, Baron immediately retaliated, knocking the man to the ground. But the battle was far from over. Numerous magical formations appeared in the sky as he raised his hand. Countless flames erupted, raining down upon everyone. In an instant, the entire arena transformed into a hellscape. Just as he reveled in this chaos, the man unleashed a sweeping attack that obliterated all in his path. At this moment, Thin Chi-han had soared to the top of the leaderboard, leaving Baron in a state of disbelief. For Thin Chi-han remained unscathed amidst Baron's flames. In fact, the fire couldn't touch him at all. It dawned on Baron that this man might also wield incredible power. Naturally, the man affirmed this, but Baron found it utterly impossible, because only those possessing 2 professions could wield such strength. The man explained that it was simply a matter of perception. Only when he embraced this power did he realize Baron was completely oblivious to how to harness it. Hearing this, Baron was consumed by rage. A torrent of magical energy erupted from his body as he resolved to obliterate Thin Chi-han with this attack. The man remained calm and composed. Slowly, he retrieved a crystal from his pouch, an item he had unexpectedly recalled from yesterday, a shard of crystal. It could grant a player a single use of divine blessings. As the man activated it, all his attributes surged by 50. Now, let us engage in a decisive battle. With a single, straightforward thrust, he shattered Baron's invincible flames just as he prepared to unleash his full power. Everyone believed the man was doomed to lose. Only he knew for certain that victory was within his grasp, for the Dark Queen was watching him closely. As the two prepared for their duel, Baron suddenly recalled his past life. Once, he was a true coward, a frail figure who trembled at the thought of battle. Everyone had only one opinion about Batluan: he was a tremendous waste of talent. He could have chosen 2 professions, perfectly combining them to become the master of the entire war network at any moment. Yet, he chose to be a healer and a mage, taking on the supportive role in his team. However, once he tapped into his power, Batluan underwent a complete transformation. Thanks to his innate magical energy, he dominated every match, winning with overwhelming force. Countless stars fell beneath his feet, and the players who had faced him came to a singular conclusion about Batluan. He possessed two natural disasters. The first was a fiery wave, a massive surge of flames that devoured countless foes. To this day, no one had ever evaded this attack. But today, Thin Chi Han shattered Batluan's fiery wave in an instant with a single strike of the Immortal's finger. A mere ordinary thrust left Baron utterly astonished. Meanwhile, the man realized that despite Batluan's seemingly formidable exterior, deep inside he was utterly hollow, desperately trying to mask his lack of true strength. He intentionally employed flashy techniques like this. As the man unleashed a powerful blow, Batluan was immediately knocked to the ground. At that moment, the man spoke. "You remind me of someone I once knew. No matter how strong you appear, you can't hide the insecurity that lurks within. In an attempt to gain the recognition of others, you go to great lengths to train your body, alter your appearance, and use glamorous techniques to deceive yourself. But without changing your essence, all your efforts become meaningless." At that moment, the man suddenly unleashed a powerful force. "Now, let's end this once and for all." Batluan slowly raised his right hand. Instantly, a bolt of lightning shot towards the man, sending him flying dozens of meters away. This was Batluan's second natural disaster, the lightning strike. Unlike the fiery wave, this was a technique that compressed magical energy. A single blow capable of obliterating his opponent. For Baron, this was the skill he was most proficient in. However, he was taken aback when the lightning failed to inflict significant damage on the man, because at the moment Baron struck, Thin Chi Han had used his spear to block the lethal attack. He had to admit that Thin Chi Han's adaptability was remarkable. Nevertheless, Baron was certain the man would not escape the next attack, because this time he would unleash a full-force punch. At this moment, everyone present believed the man had lost, for no one could withstand such a technique. But only the man knew he had already won, as the Dark Queen was intently observing him. In that instant, the man slowly raised the Phoenix sword high, and just as Batluan unleashed his lightning strike, he moved with the speed of the wind. He threw the sword in his hand and was immediately knocked down after 8 rounds. Although the Phoenix sword would disappear after being thrown 5 times, this person did not hesitate because his goal was never 8 rounds, but the Dark Queen outside the arena. With the sound of the explosion, the Roman arena was destroyed for the first time. The British only threw an ordinary arrow, but this surprised everyone because he broke the protective barrier of the Roman arena for the first time. And becoming the first person to compete against the Dark Queen, just before a man on the other side of the stage broke the fence, Li Haiyuan was surprised by a man on the screen defeating 8 rounds. Because you put everything in 8 rounds, if you continue to develop like this, everything you earned last time will be in vain. Now a voice is calling out to you, and you don't seem to think that I can win this game. Although you anticipated this, you inevitably have a little sadness. Li Haiyuan also agrees with this because he lost from the beginning. At least you should stick to it until the end, but you also realize that Lin Jiaying's mood is good. It seems that you have achieved a lot in this game. Of course, he agreed with this because it was evident from the battle that he was constantly advancing. At the same time, the sound of the phone next door caught their attention. Now, everyone's gaze was focused on the Roman arena, and Baron felt very angry because he realized that Sheng Jihan's target was not him. After destroying the Phoenix sword, he returned to the hands of the person who had not seen the Dark Queen for a long time. Of course, he affirmed this because from the battle, it could be seen that he was constantly advancing, and the movement from the phone on one side at this moment caught everyone's attention. Everything was focused on the Roman arena, and the Baron felt very angry because he realized that Sheng Jihan's target was not him at all. After destroying the barrier at this moment, the Phoenix sword returned to the man's hands, and it was a long time since he had seen the Queen's figure. In the next second, countless black energies instantly spread throughout the entire arena. At this moment, all the phones in front of the screen lost signal, and the entire arena was shrouded in endless darkness and stood here. Just breathing consumed a lot of energy. Although he could feel the Shadow Queen staring at him, There was no hint coming from the window. Obviously, this was far from provocative. Then the man suddenly exerted force, and a fairy pointed the way towards the Shadow Queen. Striking directly at him, the impact was fierce, but it didn't take long for him to realize something was amiss. He was absorbing the sword energy completely, which meant that all of Thi Chi Han's attacks were ineffective against him. Now, faced with the encroaching shadows, he suddenly saw a man launching a punch at him, yet he felt no sensation of being hit. Could it be that all these were mere illusions? Then he watched as all the shadows surged forward to attack the others, engaging in a fierce struggle. The man soon realized that physical attacks had no effect on them, prompting him to summon his divine power. He unleashed a surprise strike. Although it didn't inflict any visible damage, his presence had been significantly diminished by the divine energy, indicating that the shadows were powerless against it. At that moment, one shadow suddenly seized the man's right leg. A second shadow followed, launching an attack. In an instant, the man opened his eyes wide, and countless bolts of lightning surged forth in all directions. Right there, he repelled all the shadows in the blink of an eye, watching them retreat in sheer terror. His eyes gleamed with certainty. As long as there was light, they wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Just then, the bolts of lightning dimmed around him as he turned his head. He saw an enormous figure charging toward him, and he cursed under his breath. This was a disaster. It had merely summoned a faint flame, yet it left everyone here astounded. This flame not only illuminated the entire arena, but also obliterated the overwhelming darkness completely. As the shadow lunged at the man, Thi Chi Han swiftly sidestepped to evade it. After all, he didn't have a connection device. If he were hit, it would surely mean his end. Combat gear was a mandatory requirement for participation in the competition, and most top players opted for over 90 pain reduction to eliminate the fear of pain, allowing them to unleash their talents freely. But Tihan chose not to use a connection device for a simple reason. The war network was about to become a reality. The connection device's functions were only temporary, and once the Space Alliance appeared, everything would become useless. Thus, Thi Chi Han opted for adaptation instead. As the flames scorched him and the lightning pressure from the summoned Ford struck him, he had to endure agonizing pain that others could hardly imagine. Meanwhile, everyone stood spellbound at the spectacle unfolding before them, for they had never witnessed anything like it. It seemed as though the dark shadow had ensnared Thi Chi Han tightly. Now, faced with the impending attack from this darkness, the man had no choice but to evade. Although he understood that this mission was far from simple, the sheer size of the entity rendered him utterly helpless. If he continued to flee, death would be inevitable. Yet, what weighed heavier on his mind was the reality that he was painfully aware of a suffering unimaginable to others, and the onlookers were gripped by sheer terror at the scene before them, for such a sight was beyond their comprehension. However, it appeared that the dark shadow was focusing on the assault by Thi Chi Han at that moment. The man could only choose to evade this overwhelming force. While he knew that this task was not as easy as it seemed, facing such a colossal being left him with no options. If he kept trying to hide, it was only a matter of time before he met his end. More importantly, the crowd was fixated on him. The thunderous sound from the earlier defeat of Bat Luan had made Thi Chi Han the target of everyone's attention. Confronted with an enemy assaulting him from both sides, the man made a resolute decision. In an instant, a fierce blaze erupted around him. "If you choose to shroud me in darkness, then I shall unleash a brilliance far more potent to dispel this nameless shadow divine technique. 3 talents, 5 elements." With that, a roaring inferno surged towards the dark shadow, accompanied by a thunderous boom that reverberated through the air. The colossal dark shadow was obliterated, vanishing without a trace, leaving even the spectators nearby fleeing in terror. "Only you remain now, Shadow Queen," he declared, as the dark mist around him slowly began to encircle him again. It seemed that as long as his true form remained unscathed, this would not be the end. He could not continue on this path any longer. At that moment, the man suddenly gathered his energy, blowing into his dantian. If the 3 talents, 5 elements technique proved ineffective against him, He had no choice but to employ the nameless divine arts. Although, based on his current capabilities, it might not be flawless, but it could compensate for his shortcomings. The phoenix flame would ignite as he hurled it forth, allowing the man to make up for the deficit in his power. Lightning was described as the wrath of the gods, a form of punishment from divine beings upon mankind. Yet, when the world was shrouded in darkness and chaos, time itself brought forth hope for the people. At this moment, Chi slowly began to condense the force of the lightning, its intensity surpassing anything he could withstand. With a mighty shout, he called forth, "Cleanse all evil and darkness. Thunder God, divine technique, nameless lightning God's destruction."